Peoria Unified, our kindergarten programs are designed to ensure that your child is known, valued, cared for, and challenged. Kindergarten is so much more than just the ABCs. It is where creativity is encouraged and bright minds blossom in a fun and safe environment. In Peoria Unified, we strive to make this an easy adjustment for parents to ensure your child is well prepared for the best possible educational experience. If you have an incoming kindergartner who will turn 5 by September 1st, 2024, visit peoriaunified.org/kindergarten for more information about how to reserve your child's seat in our kindergarten program. Enroll today.
Are you looking for a fulfilling career? Peoria Unified School District has openings at all levels. With outstanding benefits and professional growth opportunities, there's something to help you feel fulfilled and appreciated each and every day. Join the community where experienced educators have their expertise valued, where new teachers are supported from day one, and where those who are passionate about education reach their full potential. Welcome to Peoria Unified School District, where every day is an opportunity to make a difference. Visit us online. you looking for a fulfilling career? Peoria Unified School District has openings at all levels. With outstanding benefits and professional growth opportunities, there's something to help you feel fulfilled and appreciated each and every day. Join the community where experienced educators have their expertise valued, where new teachers are supported from day one, and where those who are passionate about education reach their full potential. Welcome to Peoria Unified School District, where every day is an opportunity to make a difference. Visit us online. looking for a fulfilling career? Peoria Unified School District has openings at all levels. With outstanding benefits and professional growth opportunities, there's something to help you feel fulfilled and appreciated each and every day. Join the community where experienced educators have their expertise valued, where new teachers are supported from day one, and where those who are passionate about education reach their full potential. Welcome to Peoria Unified School District, where every day is an opportunity to make a difference. Visit us online. Are you looking for a fulfilling career? Peoria Unified School District has openings at all levels.
Convene public hearing pursuant to ARS 15-1 2023-905, B, C, D, and E for review of the proposed fiscal year 2025 expenditure budget. I do need a motion to convene this public hearing.
I will motion. I will second.
All right, so Ms. Darner, we have a motion by Mrs. Rooks and a second by Mrs. Ewing. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes?
President Proudfit,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yes.
President Proudfit, members of the board, because we have the presentation up, you're not able to see the control panel, but I do see that the motion passed unanimously.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Ms. Myers, before you begin, we do have public comment tied to this line item. So after you present, we'll welcome public comment, and then we'll go through any board member questions or comments. Okay? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Clerk Sandoval, Dr. Summers, Cabinet and Community, thank you for the opportunity to present the fiscal year 2025 proposed expenditure budget for adoption this evening. Tonight, I will briefly highlight information that was initially shared on June 26th at our last governing board meeting. This includes the budget process, the fiscal year 2025 budget amounts for maintenance and operations, district additional assistance, classroom site fund, and select cash controlled and grant funds. I will also provide remarks at the end of the presentation related to the Casimir case in Maricopa County and the district's estimated tax rate for next year. Per state statute, school districts are required to propose and adopt an expenditure budget by July 15th each year. The district proposed the fiscal year 2025 budget on June 26th. Tonight, we are holding a public meeting, which is required by statute, a public hearing, I should say, prior to the proposed budget, which was previously approved to be adopted this evening. The proposed budget was made available both on the district's website as well as at the Arizona Department of Education for 10 days prior to tonight's meeting. Budget revisions will subsequently take place in the months of December and May during the fiscal year. And I will highlight, and we've shared this many times before, it has been a multi-month process to come to tonight with the budget formally being adopted, with input from the district's budget team and a review of fixed and variable expenses, benefit renewal costs, stipend, salary schedules, and other budget items that had been previously approved by the governing board in April, as well as in the proposed budget on June 26. I also shared at our last meeting that initially the Arizona Auditor General's Office had published preliminary budget forms due to the length of the legislative session. And then, of course, the legislative session did wrap up on June 15th, and the governor approved the state of Arizona budget, $16.1 billion budget, and she signed that on June 18th. And so the forms that we're adopting our budget on tonight are the official forms that were previously released. And the budget that is being proposed for adoption reflects all of the legislative action and session law for the fiscal year 2025 state of Arizona budget and related outcomes for public school districts. And I'll just note briefly, the equalization formula, which is the basis of how public school districts are funded, consists of three main components: the base support level, the transportation support level, TRCL, which is Transportation Revenue Control Limit, and District Additional Assistance. This formula is the basis for funding for Peoria Unified next year, and the base support level is determined based on district enrollment. It's allocated based on a 1.0 per student count. And so for fiscal year 2025, the district is receiving a 2% increase in the base level for our funding, and that increases the base support level to $5,013. This final percentage was the amount that we used in budget development. We were anticipating a 2% increase through our budget process. And in addition, there is a transportation funding increase per route mile and an increase to the classroom site fund that was previously shared with the governing board in April when compensation recommendations were made related to this fund. It is also important to note that Prop 123 funding that districts receive and have received in recent years, a portion of that will be sunsetting in fiscal year 2026. I've noted that on the slide. Peoria Unified's portion of that amount that will ultimately sunset is $2,328,075 in the fiscal year 2025 budget. For next year, the Arizona budget also includes a one-time statewide district additional assistance or capital amount for public school districts is $23,142,000. And it's an increase for next year, which will be distributed proportionately to districts based upon their fiscal year 2025 district additional assistance funding formula. And that final allocation methodology is pending from ADE. In addition to that funding, there will be an increase one-time amount related to the free and reduced price lunch student weight program. That'll be a $37 million amount that will be distributed to public school districts and charters. Again, we're waiting for that allocation methodology, and that will be fully recognized in our December budget revision. Also, what's important to note is the aggregate expenditure limit was overridden as part of the legislative session this year. We've shared information about the AEL in the past, and without legislative action, districts would be required to reduce their budget in the fourth quarter of the fiscal year. And so out of the gate, the legislature did override the aggregate expenditure limit for fiscal year 2025, so we won't have that as a concern for next year, but a permanent fix does need to be addressed. It's a one-year solution. We've shared this slide with you many times in the past, and it highlights some of the internal and external factors and considerations that are part of our budget process. These fixed and variable considerations include the funding amount received from the state, any increases related to inflation, the 2% I mentioned earlier, as well as compensation increase, priorities, enrollment, as well as impacts related to increases to the minimum wage, employer benefit costs, utilities, custodial services, and curriculum and student learning initiatives as an example. And in addition to these fixed and variable expenses, there are priority impacts that were also considered as part of the development process for the budget. And they're listed on this slide. We've included this in past presentations to the governing board. And the one highlight I'll note, our budget that we're proposing for adoption does recognize the continuation of the decline in enrollment that we experienced last year and projections related to fiscal year 2025, as well as a priority related to recruiting and retaining quality teachers and staff, instructional resources, and the continued focus on long-term compression initiatives to address compression for our most tenured employees. Maintenance and operations is where most of the daily expenditures occur for the district, and this includes salaries and benefits, purchase services, supplies, utilities, special education, and transportation costs as an example. The proposed fiscal year 2025 M&O budget amount is $307,865,628 and is based on 33,183.3443 unweighted student average daily membership, as well as an estimate for our fiscal year 2024 carry forward. Included in the proposed budget is the $3.6 million cost of the governing board approved 2% raise that was made available to eligible employees at the district and previously approved salary schedule adjustments. The proposed budget also includes $33.1 million of funding from the district's 13% M&O override. Capital funding is used to purchase technology, software, instructional aids, textbooks, vehicles, equipment, and capital repairs and construction for buildings and infrastructure. The proposed district additional assistance capital budget is $56,059,880, and it also includes a projected capital carry forward of $35.4 million. Over the course of fiscal year 2023, administration and our superintendent at the time began to work on a multi-year capital improvement facility master planning and strategic plan initiative related to operations, maintenance, safety, and enrollment capacity. And this priority was included in last year's budget as well as this year's as far as our capital improvement plan. And here we've noted on this slide priorities that include capital, both annual dollars and carry forward related to school facilities, oversight board renewal grants, E-rate, and future bond program funding as funding sources, in addition to the annual capital funding that the district receives each year. Projects that are part of the capital improvement plan and the capital budget for next year include priority facility maintenance projects with a $2 million budget amount, high school and district administrative center cameras at $713,000, bus replacements are $477,000, carpet replacements at $500,000, technology replacements at $1 million, and textbook and instructional resource priorities and future adoptions that we currently have budgeted at $6.2 million. And in addition, we just recently awarded a new a bid, I should say, for a new education building at Lake Pleasant Elementary, which will be funded from our capital dollars and capital carry forward, as well as we have included in next year's budget a new educational building at Liberty High School, again to be funded from the district's own capital funding. Classroom site fund is defined in statute to be eligible for the use to support teachers and student support service staff who are coded to function 2100. So by statute, it's restricted to a finite population of employees. Classroom site fund is funded from a 0.6 cent education sales tax that was initially established in Prop 301, and in addition, there is funding from state land trust sales and associated revenues. And this estimated amount per weighted student for next year is $792, which is an increase of $34 from last year, or 5% from the current year funding. And that's resulting in $657,645 of new classroom site funding. In April, the governing board approved several budget considerations for next year from Classroom Site Fund, including a $3,000 increase to the certified initial placement schedule for a new $51,000 beginning salary for certified staff, 10% increase to Classroom Site Fund eligible staff for their portion of salary funded from Classroom Site Fund or the equivalent in M&O, as well as the continuation of a protected day for certified teachers, and this was also expanded to add nurses, LPNs, and related service providers in the district who are also considered eligible staff. And when I say next year, I'm speaking to fiscal year 25, which is the year that we're adopting. And again, in addition, a $300 additional amount to the Classroom Site Fund portion of salaries for Classroom Site Fund eligible exempt employees who have worked for the district from 4 to 20 years to address banded compression was also approved and is included in tonight's budget. And this included our instructional coaches and legacy 2,200 function employees who received the same equivalent amount of funding from M&O. So in total, the fiscal year 2025 Classroom Site Fund budget is $73,963,537, and this does include the projected carry forward from fiscal year 2024. And the proposed budget also contains budgeted amounts for non-levy, cash-controlled, and grant funds. They are highlighted on this slide, a number of examples. I will note we do not have any bond dollars in our budget. The district does not currently have a bond in place. Another note is that our high school resource officers are included in a cash-controlled fund and direct costs, and that's through an IGA with the cities of Peoria and Glendale. In addition, there is $39,545,959 million of federal and state grants in the budget. District administration regularly monitors grant opportunities to support district initiatives and student learning each year. And the budget includes title grants, IDEA, Perkins, School Facilities Oversight Board, Medicaid in public schools, and final amounts related to COVID funding from the federal government. In addition, the budget includes $1.1 million of E-rate technology grants and $7 million of projected School Facilities Oversight Board grants. I've shared before, Medicaid in public schools reimbursements can be used for any M&O eligible purpose here in the district. At the April 25th, 2024 Governing Board meeting, an enhancement to the previously approved retention stipend was also approved, an increase to $750 for employees with 16 to 25 years of service, up to $1,000 for employees who had been with the district 26 years or longer. Again, this retention stipend is in the budget with a cost of $2.2 million to be paid from cash-controlled funds, including Medicaid in public schools grants, community education, and indirect costs. Administration has previously shared we're in the final stages of utilizing our ESSER grant funding. It's a reimbursable grant from the federal government put in place to help public school districts respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 were previously expended in June 30th, 2023. ESSER 3 will be substantially expended this year, fiscal year 2024, the fiscal year that just completed. However, $7.4 million of those expenditures and open purchase orders are rolling into fiscal year 2025 as we close out the grant. The grant formally sunsets September 30th, 2024, so we're able to do that. Again, those grant dollars support textbook adoption, summer school, technology purchases, instructional aids, resources, and staff training, as well as professional development. At our last meeting, I shared information regarding the Casimir, and some call it Quasi-Meyer. It's up to debate the correct pronunciation case. The Maricopa Maricopa County lawsuit that was settled really, and it's impacting the property taxes collected from 2015 to 2023 in Maricopa County. And specifically, the court held that under state statute, any transition from a Class 3 to a Class 4 property, which is basically going from a primary residence to a rental or vice versa, was a change in use. And this ruling is ultimately requiring Maricopa County, the Maricopa County Assessor's Office, to refund previously collected property tax revenues. And school districts have been notified, through no fault of their own, that the districts will be required to refund revenue cash payments that were previously paid to the districts due to those excessive property tax collections from 2015 to 23. And this is ongoing. The guidance is being updated almost weekly, it seems, and districts have been notified what their estimate is related to the refunds. For Peoria Unified, it's $7.2 million. And the treasurer does expect to begin refunding those tax payments beginning in early fiscal year 2025. Districts will consequently see a reduction of cash on hand as prior payments are swept and taken back. And until recently, again, there were no real final steps because this had been such an evolving situation. However, as the legislature concluded the 2024 legislative session, they did take action with House Bill 2909 and Senate Bill 1747, and they addressed the case. And there were some outcomes. The first was, across the board, there's going to be a statewide recalculation of state aid. Districts did not need to have independent resolutions to address this. Inaccessible cash on hand can be used to offset the cash payment reductions that will occur, the cash on hand that will be reduced, as well as if a district needed to levy for any resulting cash deficit through a primary judgment adjustment. There's a mechanism to do that, which would also specifically identify Casimir as the line item. And then, of course, if a district needed to borrow to offset the cash, the reduction in cash. I can tell you Peoria Unified is not in that situation. And so with that, it's evolving. We'll keep you posted. We now expect that any impacts related to the district's tax rate will be more fully addressed in fiscal year 26 versus 2025. But Speaking of 2025 and our tax rate, every time we propose our budget, we estimate the tax rate for primary and secondary taxes using a tax rate levy template that's published by the Property Tax Oversight Commission and the Office of the Maricopa County School Superintendent. The final tax rate will be set in August, later this summer, and may change from our estimate. But in the proposed budget, there is an estimate, a continued decrease in both the primary and secondary tax rate compared to last year. The main reason for the decrease is there's been an increase in the net assessed valuation of properties, taxable properties here in the district, coupled with the continued amortization of the district's outstanding bond sales and recent bond funding. And again, any final adjustments related to the Casimir case will affect the primary tax rate portion of the property tax calculation and will once again be separately identified. The proposing and adoption of the expenditure budget is part of stewardship of community resources. It is the first action in the fiscal year related to financial reporting and compliance and becomes part of the annual financial reporting that is done each year, including the audits that take place and are publicly shared each fiscal year. And so with that, based on the information provided, administration does recommend that the governing board approve and adopt the fiscal year 2024-2025 expenditure budget as presented during the action agenda item later in the meeting. This concludes the presentation. At this time, the community can offer comments, and I'm also available to answer questions from the governing board regarding the proposed budget for adoption this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Myers. Yeah, we do have public comment tied to this line item, and that comes from Mr. Jeff Toby. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, good evening. And thank you, Mrs. Myers, for that presentation. Hopefully you can answer a question for me. Reference the carryover funds. My question is this: with the 2024 carryover funds of, I think was what she mentioned was 35.4 million, and then tied into our 56 million capital expense for this next fiscal year. The last sheet on the other attachment for tonight's agenda showed that we had between M&O capital and the classroom site funds 76.4 million carryover past the 2025 year. So I'd just like to get maybe some simplification as far as what's going to be left over in our carryover fund. How are we looking as far as our reserves moving forward? And after the 56 million capital expense for the replacement of the equipment, the buses, the buildings, what are we looking at? And I'd just like to see where we're at, get a snapshot picture. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Ms. Myers, I know these meetings are recorded. Were you able to capture the request?
Thank you. I can speak in general to carry forward amounts in maintenance and operations, capital, and classroom site fund. Each fund has its own set of restrictions that are embedded in statute. So, for example, capital dollars carry forward in the capital fund cannot be used for classroom site fund. Classroom site fund carry forward cannot be used for capital or general M&O. So as I spoke to those budget amounts that we're proposing, including any carry forwards, the M&O portion has an estimated carry forward. And again, we've not fully closed out the year, and that's why there's also an opportunity when the district presents our annual financial report in October each year to highlight the final carry forward. But right now in this budget, we are estimating a $20 million M&O carry forward, and those dollars are in place to assist the district for changes that may occur during the year. An example is changes in enrollment, classroom site fund carry forward, working with the budget team, is going to be utilized over the next 10 years for a number of the initiatives that have been recently approved in the last 2 years, including the increase to our beginning teacher salary schedule, the additional percentage increases that we've highlighted over several meetings, the 10%, as well as increases to performance pay that were approved last year. So we look at carry forward amounts and we say, how can we utilize these for initiatives, and for how many years will that carry forward support these initiatives? So we actually, with the budget team, looked at 10 years worth of drawing down the carry forward that we have in classroom site fund. And the majority of that's going to be an ongoing support for teacher compensation, 2,100 function teachers and support staff, as well as salary schedule enhancements. Speaking back to M&O, when there are changes in enrollment with current year funding, an example, 1,000 student decline is about $5 million. So districts are asked to keep an appropriate reserve in place in their fund balance to navigate unexpected changes in enrollment or other expenses that might need funding during the year. And if a district does not have an appropriate carry forward, they can actually be deemed as being under distress by the Arizona Auditor General. In regard to capital, as we worked with our Citizens Advisory Committee and we looked at the fact that we do not have a bond, utilizing capital, school facilities oversight board grants, E-rate and other capital eligible expenses, our funding sources rather, for capital expenses, we were able to identify over a 7-year period, and you saw this when we made our bond recommendation, how that carry forward will help us maintain facilities and address priority and essential needs in the next few years. So that carry forward that we highlighted tonight has projects assigned to it in our capital improvement plan, and we've been very intentional with that, including the ability to build the new education building at Lake Pleasant, as well as the future building at Liberty.
Yeah, thank you for that. Board, I don't have any other public comment tied to this line item. Board members, questions, comments? Mrs. Ricks?
I was going to ask questions later on when we have the action item, but I did have one question pop in when you were bringing up the carry forward amount with the Arizona Auditor General's office. You said that you guys are, I guess, required to have, do you know what the amount is that you have to have in that carry forward, I guess?
Thank you. Mrs. Rooks, Mr. Sandoval, members of the governing board, administration did share with the governing board the report that was published earlier in the spring. I'm happy to provide that report and the information. I don't have that full report. It's an extensive document committed to memory, but I can provide that again so you can see exactly what the Arizona Auditor General includes in that analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ricks. Mrs. Ewing?
I don't have any questions. Thank you. She covered it all, so thank you.
Just a couple for you. So you talked about the SFB and our grants. Can you, and if you can't at Friday, or I can request something later, but can you talk a little bit about, from a grant perspective, how we may have grown in those dollars year over year? Because where I'm headed is, I know as a district, we're always problem solving with the resources that we have and trying to leverage other resources, external, and bringing them in, right, to ensure all centered around student success and our teachers and staff success. Is there a trend in those grants? And I know there's a lot of variables in there, right, and other factors that determine that, but how are we doing as a team in leveraging those external resources is my, I guess, pointed question.
Thank you. Clerk Sandoval, members of the governing board, every year there are opportunities for districts to apply for renewal grants or, if eligible, new construction, and that's an important asterisk if the district's eligible for new construction. Peoria Unified is not eligible for new construction at this point, but when it comes to renewal grants, that might be a new roof or weatherization, which is also another name for painting a school. Those types of projects are often available, and we've pursued them in recent years. We have had SFB grants at Centennial and Ironwood for roofing, as well as we just this evening awarded a roofing and weatherization bid that will be part of our application through the School Facilities Oversight Board. So it depends in part on the funding that's allocated by the legislature each year, how many projects the School Facilities Oversight Board can fund, but our facilities group in partnership with business services monitors those opportunities regularly, and where appropriate we apply to ensure we're eligible for the funding.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you highlighted a lot of areas that continue to just be inspiring with regard to how you always are looking forward and what may be coming around the corner with the carryover dollars, and how you just think with great intention and your stewardship of the public's monies is reflective, on our district's ability to continue to integrate, additional programming and resources to meet students where they are, because of your ability to think forwardly and have those dollars available as we move forward, even in front of like Quasmar. Is that correct?
According to some people, yes.
Even with, that coming around the corner, right? It's, it's something that, we have the ability to expand, I guess, but not really miss a beat, if you will, in ensuring student success. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Mrs. Proud or President Proudfitz, any questions for Mrs. Myers?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make a statement about, I just really appreciated looking at your considerations list, that we're really staying focused on recruiting the quality teachers and staff, and kind of to echo what Mr. Sandoval said, I just appreciate when we get these reports, how conservative our district is financially, that when things like the Casimir case come up, it is incredibly unfortunate, but that it doesn't negatively impact our district because of our conservative values with our spending. So thank you.
Thank you, President Profit.
Mr. Clerk, Sandoval, how to start that. I did have a question, and I guess it kind of goes on with your question with the federal dollars. I noticed on I guess it's the larger adopted report on the bottom on page 13. It breaks down our federal projects and our unrestricted capital outlay. And I just noticed that there was a decrease in both of those. So I didn't know if there was any reason, I guess, with like the federal projects. Sorry if that was too fast, sorry.
No, thank you. Can you repeat, are you looking at the actual
Yes,
budget?
that one, yeah. Page,
When you say page 13.
Yeah, it said page 13, I think, on here. I'm zoomed in, sorry. I'm looking at page 13, but it might be, it says page 2 of 2, so I don't know.
You're looking at page 13 of the PDF?
Yes,
Mrs.
of the
Rook?
PDF, yeah.
I'm going to ask our IT team to please pull that up so everyone can see. And while we're doing that, if I may clarify with Quasimir, the repayment and the impact to districts varies based on tax collections that were previously made. And so the impact by district is not a result of that district's activities, but more so the types of properties that were subject to the lawsuit and the repayment. So I just wanted to make that note. Some districts have a significant dollar amount, and that was no fault of their own, but circumstance with the types of properties that were in their taxing jurisdiction, and the cash payments that were subsequently taken back, or will be taken back.
Yeah, no, understood. Clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just interrupt? I want to let them know over there that they're actually looking at a different document than what Ms. Rooks
Yes.
was referring to, in case the community needed to see what they were
Yes,
referring to.
thank you.
Thank
Yeah, the
you.
bigger one.
Terry, if you would look please at the second attachment, which is the actual budget itself, and then go to page 13, please, of the PDF.
I think it's the other one.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
The PDF to the left, please. Thank you.
I know it's page 13, just trying to. Yes, yeah, so the fund of the federal projects, I noticed there was a decrease of about 41.7%, so I just didn't know if there was a reason from each year.
Thank you. In the fiscal 2025 budget, our federal grant dollars are decreasing because the ESSER grant is sunsetting. We, in prior years, and then in fiscal year 2023, expended ESSER 1 and 2, ESSER 3, the $39 million largest ESSER funded grant that we received from the federal government as part of the COVID response is being fully expended this year and the beginning of, when I say this year, fiscal year 2024, and the beginning of fiscal year 2025. And so that's what you're seeing is the majority of the change between 24 and 25.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate answering it. And that was the only questions I had. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. If no further questions, Ms. Myers, thank you. All right, moving on to Section 3, adjournment of public hearing. I do need a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I will motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I will second.
Ms. Donner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second by Mrs. Rooks. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes?
Mrs. Proudfit,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing,
Yes.
Motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mrs. Donner. All right, moving on to Section 4, opening exercises, moment of silence, pledge of allegiance. Mrs. Ewing, do you mind leading us in this evening's exercises? Thank you. Okay, moving on to Section 5, address agenda and consider adoption or recommend changes. Board members, do you have any changes that you'd like to make to this evening's agenda? Mrs. Ewing?
I don't have any changes, thank you.
Mrs. Rooks?
I just would like to pull 7.15. It's the Arizona Department of Education Targeted Support and Improvement Grant. I would like to have the community be able to look through all of the work that's going behind it so that they're aware of what we're working on. So I just wanted to review that.
Okay, I'll second that.
Thank you.
President Proudfit, any items that you would like to make changes to with regard to this evening's agenda?
None for me, thanks.
All right, thank you. I do want to pull 7.2, but more specifically, at the direction of the administration, this item, they would like to table it for a future governing board meeting.
Do you want to pull 7.5? 7.2 is the minutes.
Did I just
Yes,
say
7.
7.2?
I think it was 7.5 that you were.
7.10. Have that right?
Yes, Mr. Sandoval, administration will request 7.10 is tabled for a future board meeting.
Mrs. Myers, were you going to say something?
Thank you. I was going to mention it's 7.10. Thank you.
Did I say 7.2?
Yes. So trying to correct you.
We got
there.
you covered.
Sorry,
Thank you. Wow.
but I will second that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, if no other requests, I do need a motion to approve this evening's agenda minus 7.15 and the tabling of 7.10.
I'll motion to approve the agenda minus 7.15 and 7.10.
I will second that.
Ms. Donner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Rooks and a second by Mrs. Ewing. When you get an opportunity, if you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Clerk Sandoval?
Ms. Donner, that's in the motion. It should be 7.15.
I apologize, Clerk Sandoval. Give me a few moments to make those changes.
Now, of course,
So just to clarify, we need to remove 715, which is the Arizona Department of Education fiscal year 2025 targeted support and improvement.
correct.
Okay. Thank you. Bear with me.
Mr. Sandoval, if I may, just to make sure we are totally clear, we are moving 7.15 to items removed from consent. That will become 8.1.
Yep.
Ms. Donner, 7.10, save 25-5201, that will be pulled from this meeting, tabled for a future meeting. The 7.111 should remain in consent as initially presented.
So,
ahead.
pardon me, do we need to make another motion then to reflect?
I think
tabling it?
the motion was correct, the execution was, what's at issue. So we're gonna clean that up and make sure that it reads on our screen correctly. So Ms. Donner, I think 8.2, you can move back to consent as 7.1. It will become the new 7.10. And then the 8.1 item can be tabled.
Thank you for everyone's patience, by the way.
I don't know that.
President Proudfit, just an FYI, we're just making sure that the motion reads correctly.
Clerk Sandoval, members of the board, cabinet, and guests, thank you so much for your patience. I have the correct motion wording now, and I will run you through a voice vote. Clerk Sandoval,
Yes.
President Proudfit,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, everyone. Mrs. Donner, thank you. All right, moving on to recognition 6.1. Ms. Ari?
Clerk Sandoval, members of the board, no formal recognitions this evening.
Thank you. 6.2, board comments. President Proudfit.
Yes, I have no comments this evening.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Ewing?
I do, thank you. So I, this week, my son, who's, he graduated from Liberty High School last year, or this past May, and was part of their Liberty golf team. He was just offered a roster scholarship, or a roster spot on the South Mountain Community College golf team. So I just want to say a huge shout out to Coach Anderson over at Liberty High School and Coach Lineman at Liberty High School. And I just really want to appreciate all of those parents who help support those golf members. My son will be joined with Adam Croy, who's also from Liberty High School. He'll be playing on that team. And with those two boys on the South Mountain Community College golf team, that'll actually make 3 Liberty High School team members on that, former golf team members on that college Division II team. And so I got a chance to meet the coach down there. His whole office was plastered wall to wall with plaques and trophies from all of their championships. So I'm extremely excited, and that says a huge, it just says volumes about our golf programs that we put together, and that all of our athletic programs and the support that we have. And I really want to say I appreciate the Blackstone group that has hosted all the practices for Liberty High School. So that's my big excitement for the week, is to give my son a big shout out. So thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
That's great. Mrs. Rooks?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I hope everybody had a great 4th of July in our celebration of our country. I know that just happened, and I know that there's an upcoming event on July 27th, Saturday at 8 a.m. It starts at the Peoria Sports Complex. It's the 4th annual backpack giveaway. I believe you guys have gone to that, and it's hosted by, the Peoria Firefighters Department, City of Peoria. It's a backpack giveaway with supplies for students. So if anybody wants to volunteer, I know I've volunteered this year, so I hope you guys will be there too. And so I just wanted to mention that because it's coming up through the summer before the school year starts. And then also last, I just want to reiterate that I will not comply with the Title IX changes from the U.S. Department of Ed and the Biden administration.
So can I just add something real quick to the Peoria Firefighters charity event? There will also be some supplies that they're handing out for teachers there, as well as the backpack. So if we can, I know they're working on communicating that out to staff. So I just wanted to add that in there. So thank you.
All right. Okay. Mrs. Ewing, Mrs. Rooks, President Proudfit, thank you for your comments. I don't have any comments this evening. Moving on to 6.3, Superintendent comments. Dr. Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval, governing board members. Just a few recognitions this evening. I would like to first congratulate all of our Peoria Unified students who recently competed in the Future Business Leaders of America national competition in Orlando. Through FBLA, students can gain leadership experience and participate in activities that prepare them for future careers. We couldn't be prouder to have been represented on the national stage by such bright young minds. A very special congratulations to Kenneth Armstrong from Ironwood High School and the Met Professional Academy, who took home the 8th national ranking in word processing, and Braden Matinek, I'm sorry if I missed the pronunciation there, from Sunrise Mountain High School, who earned the national champion title in spreadsheet applications. Likewise, congratulations to Miranda Perrin from Liberty High School, who took first place in teaching strategies at the Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America, or FCCLA Leadership Conference. So congratulations to all of our incredible students who participated in this major competition. Also wanted to give a special shout out to one of our school nurses from Cheyenne Elementary School, Nurse Alexa Perry. Spent the last 2 weeks on a medical mission trip in Tanzania, Africa. She was hard at work setting up a medical clinic for the Maasai tribe in rural Ketum Ine. Thank you, Nurse Alexa, for making our schools and our world a better place.
Thank you, Dr. Summers, for that. Okay, moving on to items removed from consent. 8.1, it is the cooperative contract. Dr. Summers, I think to formalize tabling, we can go through a voice vote to table that item.
That'd be great.
Does that work?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do we need a motion first?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you for that. So I do need a motion to table the cooperative contract, SAVE 25-5201-003-5.
I will motion to table cooperative SAVE 25-5201-0035.
I will second.
Ms. Donner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second by Mrs. Rooks. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
President Proudfit,
Yes.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to 8.2, Arizona Department of Education, fiscal year 2025, Targeted Support and Improvements, TSI, Grant Application and Award. I know this was pulled by Mrs. Rooks. We don't have any public comment tied to this line item, but Mrs. Rooks?
Yes, thank you, Clerk Sandoval. I guess, Dr. Hernandez, this is you. I did just wanted to, I guess, if you could just maybe give a brief description of what this is for the community. And then on page 10, I did have a question on, it said that the action plans were all complete for each school site and what the needs were. So I didn't know if maybe you could walk through like what those kind of looked like, or what schools, or I don't know if that Friday report, if you don't have it, sorry for asking, but just was curious.
Good evening, Clerk Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about some of the exciting work that we're doing in learning and teaching to support our schools with some of our greater needs. So as has been shared with the board in the past, we do have 9 schools who are identified as targeted for school improvement in the area's subgroup, specifically with students with disabilities, along with one of our schools being identified as students with disabilities and for African American students. The TSI grant allows the district to seek funds to support enhancing the instruction and the technical quality of what's being provided at those particular schools. And with that, we've identified several areas in which we can bolster that support and include that. As far as what's in the actual plans, let me see if I can get to that pretty quickly. For each school, we needed to identify the achievement goals to be set, and the floor is at 3% improvement. So that is what is included for each of the schools, and then we are required to share how often we plan to monitor their progress toward meeting those goals, which we have identified as to be no fewer than 4 times during the school year. And then we're required to identify what the data that will be used to progress monitor those goals, and in Peoria Unified, we'll be using the Renaissance Star assessment data that our schools will be implementing this school year. For each of the schools, the number their students with disabilities or their African-American students are at for their achievement levels according to the AASA assessment. That is included in their plan and identified, and then the action steps that each school has identified is part of the process that they use from a comprehensive needs assessment strategy. So the Department of Education puts forward what that protocol looks like. This year's process was new, and the state has done some wonderful work on sharing data with districts and schools that help schools compare themselves to other like schools in the state to identify where their performance is meeting up compared to like schools. So in each of our schools' plans, we have identified the target and we've identified the strategies that the school will be using. Now, what's unique about our plans is that they are not static plans. They are monitored frequently in order to adjust as needed. So we don't wait until the conclusion of the school year to determine whether a strategy was effective or not. We are using data and we are using evidence, and we are supporting those schools at a much higher level in order to ensure that we are supporting that specific subgroup, as well as the overall school culture and climate around the power of quality instruction.
Thank you for explaining it, and I'm really looking forward to what you're working on with it, and I appreciate you explaining it because I know there's been a lot of questions on how are we ensuring our students' academic success and what does that look like. So I love hearing your groundwork for this. So thank you for explaining it. That was the only questions I had on it. So.
No, good questions. And now one of the things that you talked about is the real-time data capturing and adaptation, based on what the researcher data is telling you, which is awesome versus waiting until the end of the year and then finding out. But so thank you for that. I don't have any questions, Ms. Ewing.
I just was going to add that one of the things I loved about going around to all the schools I didn't get to all of them, but a lot of the schools, is just seeing those data rooms and how they're monitoring each and every individual student's progress and getting together in groups and talking about how can we make sure we are helping these students to improve or just reach that next level. So I really appreciate all of that effort. I know that's been a big lift by all of our staff, but it's been really great efforts. So I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to July 25th, I believe you said, is where we're going to be doing a deep dive on the data. So looking forward to hearing more. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. President Bradford, any questions tied to this line item?
None for me, thank you.
All right, thank you. So that said, I do need a motion to approve and ratify the application and acceptance of the fiscal year 2025 Targeted Support and Improvement Grant Application and Award between the Arizona Department of Education and the Peoria Unified School District.
I will motion to approve and ratify the application and acceptance of the fiscal year 2025 Targeted Support and Improvement TSI Grant Application and Award between the Arizona Department of Education and the Peoria Unified School District.
I will second.
All right. Mrs. Donner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second by Mrs. Rooks. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Mrs. Proudfit,
Yes.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Ms. Donner.
Just a brief interruption. If there is somebody who has accidentally picked up a cell phone in the women's restroom, if you would not mind bringing that to the lobby, we would appreciate it.
Okay.
Always nice when the mission's accomplished, so thank you. Maybe worthy of applause even.
Yeah. Congratulations. Moving on to Section 9, action items. 9.1, consideration of adoption of the fiscal year 2025 expenditure budget. Mrs. Myers, welcome back. Anything in addition to present?
Thank you, Clerk Sandoval, members of the governing board. I do not have any additional information to add at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Board members, questions, comments? Mrs. Ewing?
I don't have any, thank you.
Mrs. Rooks?
I just had one more quick question that came up. You mentioned earlier in the boardroom the estimated cost, $2.2 million, paid from Medicaid and public schools. You mentioned that that is can be utilized in the stipends, I believe. What does that, I guess, look like with pulling from the Medicaid and public schools to the stipends? I guess kind of the breaking down that cost of what they're reimbursed for the stipends.
Thank you. Clerk Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks, members of the governing board. My comment was related to the eligibility of use of payments that Peoria Unified receives from participating in Medicaid in public schools. The reimbursements can be used for any M&O eligible expense. The $2.2 million related to our retention stipends, my comment was simply there were a number of funding sources that were supporting those stipends, including grants, M&O carry forward, as well as Medicaid in public schools. For a number of years, that reimbursement funding source has been the funding source that we have used in addition to other eligible funding sources to support our retention stipends. The stipends for the retention of staff are not part of any billing that we do. It's simply utilizing those dollars for an eligible M&O cost, maintenance and operations. So salaries and retention stipends are an example of an eligible M&O cost.
Okay, thank you for explaining it. I appreciate it. That was the only question I had.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. President Proudfit, any questions from you tied to this line item?
And none for me, thank you.
All right, I don't have any questions or comments either. With that said, I do need a motion to approve and adopt the proposed fiscal year 2025 expenditure budget as presented. I'll move that we approve and adopt the proposed fiscal year 2025 expenditure budget as presented.
I will second.
Ms. Donner, we have a motion made by myself and a second by Mrs. Ewing. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing,
Yes.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes.
Mrs. Proudfit.
Yes.
Motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Ms. Donner. All right, moving on to 9.2, the 2024-2025 Peoria Unified Organizational Chart. Dr. Summers.
Thank you, Clerk Sandoval, members of the board. Subsequent to the vote of the board this evening to approve the grant for the targeted support and improvement application, administration is presenting an updated and revised organizational chart for your consideration and potential approval. What I'd like to call out is that essentially with the dollars that are being utilized to support the position of our school executive director for school improvement, or school improvement executive director, as you can see under the Chief Student Services offer line, we are in a position to remain in a budget neutral position and create and add essentially the Director of Special Education role that you can see that would be under our Academic Services team. So currently our Exceptional Student Services Department staffs an Assistant Director for Special Education that is filled, one Executive Director for Exceptional Student Services, which is currently open. And again, the consideration would be the addition of the Director of Special Education. That is essentially the proposed revision. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, sir. President Proudfit, any questions tied to 9.2?
None for me. I just really appreciate the focus we're putting in this area of the district and special education.
Thank you for that. Mrs. Rooks?
No questions.
Thank you. Mrs. Ewing?
I will echo President Proudfit. Just appreciate that you're putting efforts into the special education and keeping us neutral on the costs back to the district. So I appreciate that. Those two things. Thank you.
No, agreed. It's clear that everything that we do is always, don't do it in a vacuum. We always understand what's going on throughout our district, understand what the needs of our students are as we welcome all students in our district. So, thank you for building on the capacity to make sure that we are putting all our students in a position to be successful. So, thank you for that. All right, if no further questions or comments, I do need a motion to approve the 2024-2025 organizational chart as presented.
I will motion to approve the 2024-2025 organizational chart as presented.
I will second.
Ms. Donner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second by Mrs. Rooks. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Mrs. Rooks?
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing?
Yes.
Clerk Sandoval?
Yes.
Mrs. Proudfit?
Yes.
Motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mrs. Donner. All right, moving on to 9.3, Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment Arts Textbook Adoption. Dr. Hernandez.
Good evening, Clerk Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Summers, cabinet, and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to share and bring forward some of the critical, important work that is being done in supporting high-quality learning and teaching here in Peoria Unified. If it seems like we were just here doing this, it has been a little over a month since we did our last textbook adoption. So given the short time since we last went through the process, this evening's presentation will be much more brief. This evening's textbooks adoption focuses on upper division advanced content in the areas of art, math, science, and world language. And as a brief refresher, we will revisit background, policy, and law, and how the textbook selection committee functions, and then we will conclude each content area with a final recommendation for board consideration. The next generation of doctors, lawyers, global entrepreneurs, engineers, curators, and community leaders are currently enrolled in Peoria Unified's high schools. We need to prepare them for their future. Peoria Unified is proud to offer advanced placement courses, dual enrollment programs, and the prestigious International Baccalaureate program that offers invaluable benefits to our students at higher rates to get a jump start on college and their career. Through the 32 AP courses offered in Peoria Unified, students can take a deep dive into the subjects that they are passionate about while earning college credit and potentially saving both time and money in higher education. Dual enrollment courses in Peoria Unified provide a bridge between high school and college, offering students a taste of university-level coursework while still in the supportive high school environment. Each year, Ironwood High School students have the opportunity to be a part of the IB diploma program, which offers a globally recognized curriculum that fosters critical thinking, intercultural understanding, and a well-rounded education. Research from the International Baccalaureate indicates that students in IB complete college at a faster rate and feel more prepared for the university setting. Each of these options equips students with essential skills, enhances college readiness, and opens doors to prestigious universities and lucrative career paths. And now we will transition to law and policy that supports textbooks adoption right here in Arizona. Rule R721002C7 exempts textbook procurement from the Arizona School District Procurement Rules, with the governing board involved in the selection of a textbook selection committee. As we are doing this evening, the governing board has the opportunity to approve the recommendations put forward by textbook selection committee. Detailed in statutes ARS 15721 and 722, which aligns to governing board policy IJJ, the procedures and policy derive how the textbook selection committee does its work. As textbook selection committees must abide by open meeting law, all meetings for this adoption were open to the public, with minutes being posted in board docs. And all meetings were conducted according to how meetings are defined by ARS 38-431.01. And now that we are through the background, policy, and law, Ms. Piazza, our Director for Learning and Teaching, will take us through a brief review of the adoption process and take us through our first recommendation for your consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. As you may remember from our presentation in May, textbook selection committees are made up of teachers, community members, strategists, coaches, and directors, and adheres to the governing board policy IJJ and open meeting law. The textbook selection committee utilized the gateway evaluation process and collected feedback from community, parent, staff, and students during the 60-day public review. The committee's final selection, thank you, final selections were submitted to the superintendent. The textbook selection used the Gateway evaluation process to review materials through the lens of course standards, competencies, and outcomes. The committee looked at teacher and learner supports and accessibility, technology, and assessment. Any submission deemed as not meeting the expectations of a Gateway did not move on in the overall process. For the 2023 math and science textbook adoption, our student services was able to elicit feedback from both of our elementary and our high school students through our SEATS program. Students told us what they wanted to get more updated resources. They liked when they got their teachers engaged in lessons, and they liked the variety of different types of assignments and ways to demonstrate their learning, and enjoyed learning about real-life concepts and careers. Students' language, their voice, can be heard throughout the Gateway evaluation process and includes how well the resources meet the needs of every learner. Following the Gateway evaluation process and following the close of the 60-day public review window, the textbook selection committee met again for the analysis and recommendation phase. Leading up to the analysis and recommendation phase, textbooks were placed on display beginning May 1st, 2024, in the lobby of the District Administration Center through July 1st, 2024. The district opened the lobby on Fridays towards the end of May and throughout June as part of the 60-day window. Additionally, we had a dedicated website with digital platform access and textbook vendor list. While feedback would have been welcomed in any format, the following were explicitly provided as avenues to gather feedback: paper pencil forms, QR codes to access forms online, a dedicated textbook adoption email address, and our website. After the 60-day window closed, all feedback received was reviewed as part of the analysis and recommendation phase. The committee held a final review with discussion to determine the recommendation that was forwarded on to the superintendent. As part of the final two phases, the textbook selection committee recommendation was forwarded to the superintendent and then on to the governing board for consideration of approval. Tonight, we bring you Advanced Placement, International Baccalaureate, and the Dual Enrollment Textbook Adoption Recommendations for Art. I'd like to take a brief moment to talk about the profile of a learner who might take Advanced Placement Music Theory. This course is valuable to equip students with the essential skills related to a variety of music careers. Potential career paths it can lead to include composer, music producer, arranger, sound engineer, musicologist, which, by the way, is to dive into the history and the analysis of music, as well as musician and music teacher. The Textbook Selection Committee for Arts met 3 separate times this summer, and we would like to take a moment to recognize them. They were unable to join us this evening, but we thank them for their hard work, deep thinking, discussion, and dedication. Committee members concluded McGraw-Hill's Education Tonal Harmony with an Introduction to Post-Tonal Music 9th edition would be recommended for Advanced Placement Music Theory. The adoption is for 6 years with an estimated cost of $4,200. Administration requests the Governing Board's motion to approve the Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment Arts Textbook adoption for the following vendors: AP Music Theory McGraw-Hill Education's Tonal Harmony with an Introduction to Post-Tonal Music 9th edition. Thank you, and we stand for questions at this time.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments? I don't have any tied to this line item.
Just checking.
Yep, Ms. Young.
Sorry, I didn't know if you even called on me. I just wanted to say thank you. I love that our process includes so many voices, and I love that our process includes the student voice especially. And I can definitely see with the individuals on the this committee, they're well seasoned. So I definitely appreciate that. And Peoria is known for their arts program, so you're bringing some really amazing textbook and curriculum to those students to continue to hold the high standard for arts. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Rooks?
Yeah, I was just going to thank you to the volunteers that sit through the many hours, and I see Dr. Hernandez shaking her head up and down, so I know that you all did a lot of hours working through, and I just appreciate your guys' work and the volunteers' work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. President Proudfit, questions, comments?
No questions, just echoing what Mrs. Rooks and Mrs. Ewing have already stated. Thank you very much for anyone who is willing to lend their expertise to these important committees.
Thank you for that. Yeah, agreed. I'm going to echo what's been said, and certainly appreciate the inclusion of our student voice as well in this process. But and just always thinking forwardly and making sure our students are prepared, for their future and to navigate their own path with confidence. So thank you both. Appreciate it. With that said, I do need a motion to approve the Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment Arts Textbook Adoption to the following vendors. Advanced Placement Music Theory, McGraw-Hill Education, Tonal Harmony with an Introduction to Post-Tonal Music, 9th edition. I'll motion the motion that's been recommended.
I will second that.
Ms. Downer, you have a motion made by myself, a second by Mrs. Ewing. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes.
Mrs. Proudfit,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yes.
Motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mrs. Donner. All right, moving on to 9.4, Advanced Placement International Baccalaureates and Dual Enrollment Math Textbook Adoption.
Good evening, Clerk Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Summers, cabinet, and guests. We'll continue our adoption journey together this evening with the mathematics selection. We'll take just a moment to consider the profile of a learner of students who may be taking the International Baccalaureate Applications and Interpretations in a Mathematics course and what fields they may be intending to go into. Future pathways for students in these particular math courses may include engineering, finance, computer science, data analysis, and another science that's really hard to pronounce, actuarial science. We're even now on baccalaureate. And I'd like to thank our community member, Mrs. Todd, who served on the math committee, and the next one that we'll have come up. And I believe we have some math committee members with us this evening, so I'd like to take a moment to recognize them and thank them for their service during their summer break for most of them in the 2 meetings that we had in June and July. So thank you, committee members, for your service. The Textbook Selection Committee recommends the following for the governing board's consideration: International Baccalaureate Mathematics, Analysis and Approaches, Higher Level and Support Workbook by Oxford, International Baccalaureate Mathematics, Applications and Interpretation, Higher Level and Support Workbook by Oxford. The 6-year cost for this adoption will be $12,000. And at this time, administration requests governing board motion to approve the Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment Mathematics textbook adoption to the following vendors: International Baccalaureate Math, Oxford University Press, IB Mathematics, Analysis and Approaches; International Baccalaureate Math, Oxford University Press, IB Mathematics, Applications and Interpretations. And I am available for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. Board members, questions, comments? Mrs. Ewing.
Again, I just want to thank all those who are involved in this process. I know it's very comprehensive, so I appreciate all the work by all of those involved. I actually did work for an actuarial consulting firm at one point in time, so I do know what they do. So I appreciate that, and again, I'm always impressed at the programs that we have, and I know the IB program is one of a really great program that we have down at Ironwood, so I appreciate this, so thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Rooks.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting hearing about the engineer process. My husband's an engineer, so he always gets excited when we're seeing that you guys are bringing that in for the students, for the workforce. And so thank you for your work, Dr. Hernandez, leading through all these textbook adoptions. I know it's a lot, and obviously thank you to our math volunteers and also our community volunteer, Teddy Todd. So thank you for presenting tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. President Proudfit, questions, comments?
I just, again, wanted to echo and say thank you to the members of this committee. It definitely is an exhaustive effort, and it is much appreciated that they're willing to lend their expertise. And I just also wanted to add, tonight we're doing textbook adoption for a very specific high school learner, and just the opportunities that are provided within our district to help people to truly launch into careers, into what comes next with higher learning is extremely exciting, and I think we're unmatched with what we offer our students. And so as both a board member and as a parent, I love to see when AP and dual enrollment, the IB program come up on the docket, because it's a great opportunity to highlight what is offered in our district.
Thank you, President Proudfit. Yeah, I'm going to echo everything that's been said, and thank you again to all the stakeholders for your involvement and just being intentional about being part of this village that puts all of our students, our youth, in a position to be successful. So thank you for that. All right, so I need a motion to approve the Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment Math textbook adoption to the following vendors: International Baccalaureate Math, Oxford University Press; IB Mathematics, Analysis and Approaches; International Baccalaureate Math, Oxford University Press; IB Mathematics, Applications and Interpretations.
I motion to approve.
I'll second that. Ms. Darner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Rooks and a second by myself. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes.
Mrs. Proudfit,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mrs. Donner. All right, moving on to 9.5, Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment Science Textbook Adoption. Dr. Hernandez.
So we will continue our journey with science this evening. So I'd like to highlight the profile of a learner for each of the content areas within science that we'll be covering. So we'll begin with biology. A background in biology opens doors to diverse career paths, including research, healthcare, environmental conservation, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, and education, teachers. Studying AP and IB bio can lead to a variety of career paths, and here are some of those examples. Everything from a biologist to a zoologist to a registered nurse, biometrics and robotics, biotechnology, dentistry, and even resource management and conservation. These careers span across various industries, including academia, healthcare, research, and different areas of science, including biotechnology. In chemistry, a foundation in chemistry opens doors to a wide range of career paths as well. Whether a student's interested in pursuing medicine, research, engineering, environmental science, or even business, such as pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, a background in chemistry is highly valued. Some of the areas in which students may pursue career pathways include agricultural engineering, animal science, research chemists, chemical engineers, and forensic scientists. These careers span a variety of industries, including agriculture, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and environmental science, material science, forensics, and more. Human physiology. Taking human physiology provides foundational understanding in biological sciences and relevant to health and medicine. This course bridges various disciplines such as biology, chemistry, physics, and even mathematics. It prepares students for a level of detail and complexity they will encounter in advanced coursework. Some of the career paths students may pursue when taking this course include becoming a physician, a nurse practitioner, a medical researcher, and one I wanted to be certain to highlight, video game designer. Let me tell you a little bit about that one. This role designs the core elements of video games to make them enjoyable to play. Core elements include characters, voices, gameplay, visual effects, overarching story, and source material. Many video game designers are creating realistic games and need skilled anatomy professionals to ensure their characters move realistically. Look at that. In addition, medical lab and surgical technicians are also roles students may pursue, along with being a healthcare administrator. These careers span various industries such as medical, academia, research, pharmaceuticals, and teaching. Would like to thank our textbook selection committee. As you can tell, there were numerous contents under science. This group met 3 different times, also during their summer. So thank you to that group. We have some science folks here this evening, so thank you for being here as well. The Textbook Selection Committee recommends the following for governing board consideration. Advanced Placement Biology, Savvis Learning Company, Pearson's Campbell Biology 12th Edition Test Prep Series. Advanced Placement Chemistry, Savvis Learning Company, Pearson's Chemistry, A Molecular Approach 6th Edition. Dual Enrollment Human Physiology, McGraw-Hill's Education Holds Human Anatomy and Physiology 16th Edition. International Baccalaureate Biology, Oxford University Press Biology Course Companion. All at a cost for a 6-year adoption at $87,000. At this time, administration requests the governing board motion to approve Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment Science textbook adoption to the following vendors. Advanced Placement Biology, Savvis Learning Company. Advanced Placement Chemistry, Savvis Learning Company. Dual Enrollment Human Physiology, McGraw-Hill Education, and International Baccalaureate Biology, Oxford University Press. I'm available for any questions when you have some.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. Board members, questions, comments? Mrs. Ewing.
First off, I want to say thank you so much for talking about all the different careers that our students can go to from just these classes. So, and thank you for educating those online and those out here in the audience, because a lot of times we don't always understand how that translates. And then having been at a lot of other meetings where we talk about connecting the education to the workforce, it's vitally important that all of our high schools are educating what the needs are in the community as far as at jobs and stuff. So I appreciate that we can offer this so that students can come out of high school with some real life skills. And then I just want to add that I really appreciate that we have the IB biology program. You mentioned you mentioned several different opportunities that students can go into the fields, and my dad has a PhD, Ms. Reichart, you've met him, in biology, and he's done a lot of genetic research on the Human Genome Project, and so that's like another huge opportunity. And I know that TGen is an organization that a lot of our students go do internships with them just from the education they get through Peoria. So I'm really excited about that we offer this to students. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Rooks.
No, I've talked to you about this subject area, and I've talked to Teddy Todd because I know she was on the committee as well, and she had a busy summer. So I appreciate, going that conversation. And like I said, I'm trusting you here tonight with this decision. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. President Proudfit, questions, comments?
None for me, thank you.
Yep, I don't have any questions, comments either, other than to thank everybody again for your just continued work in the district and to ensure our students are relevant, as they leave our walls. So thank you. All right, that said, I do need a motion to approve the Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment Science textbook adoption to the following vendors: Advanced Placement Biology, Savvis Learning Company; Advanced Placement Chemistry, Savvis Learning Company; Dual Enrollment Human Physiology, McGraw-Hill Education; and the International Baccalaureate Biology, Oxford University Press Biology Course Companion.
I will motion to approve Advanced Placement, IB, and Dual Enrollment Science textbook adoption to the following vendors: Advanced Placement Biology, Savvis Learning Company in Pearson; Campbell Biology 12th Edition Test Prep Series; Advanced Placement Chemistry, Savvis Learning Company, Pearson; Chemistry, A Molecular Approach 6th Edition; Dual Enrollment Human Physiology, McGraw-Hill Education holds Human Anatomy and Physiology 16th Edition; and IB Biology, Oxford University Press Biology Course Companion.
I'll second that. Ms. Donner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second by myself. Give us a voice vote, please.
Mrs. Ewing?
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks?
Yes.
Clerk Sandoval?
Yes.
Mrs. Proudfit?
Yes.
All right, motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mrs. Donner. Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. All right, moving on to 9.6, Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment World Languages Textbook Adoption.
As we've previously done with our other adoptions, we would like to share a little bit about the profile of a learner who will be pursuing dual enrollment world languages. These students are preparing for college success while in high school. In today's globalized world, numerous companies are expanding internationally to tap into new markets, making bilingual candidates more essential than ever. Learning a world language can significantly broaden career prospects, doubling the number of job opportunities available and accelerating professional advancement. In today's fiercely competitive job market, employers seek candidates who can distinguish themselves from the crowd. Proficiency in a world language can set one apart from other applicants, potentially making for a preferred choice for position. Employers value their ability to communicate effectively and solve problems efficiently, skills that are honed through mastering a second language. Japanese is a top language to learn in a globally diverse market, and closer to home, many students opt to learn American Sign Language, the sixth most common language in the United States, to build connections with those in their community. The Textbook Selection Committee for World Languages met 2 separate times this summer, and we would like to take a moment to recognize them. They're not with us tonight, but we thank them for their hard work, insights, and dedication. Committee members concluded Adventures in Japanese by Chang and Sui Company would be recommended for dual enrollment, and Sign Naturally by Dawn Sign Press would be recommended for dual enrollment American Sign Language. The adoption for 6 years is for an estimated cost of $240,000. Administration requests the governing board motion to approve the Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment World Languages textbook adoption to the following vendors: Dual Enrollment Japanese, Cheng and Sui, Adventures in Japanese 1 and 3, Dual Enrollment Sign Language, Dawn Sign Press, Sign Naturally, Units 1 to 25. And at this time, we stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Piazza. Board members, questions, comments? Mrs. Ewing?
I just want to say thank you to all of those who are part of the textbook selection committee, and I appreciate again the broad range of classes that we can offer our students and the skills that it gives them once they do leave our schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Rooks?
Yeah, thank you again for all of their hours that they volunteered, and thank you to you and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. President Proudfit, questions, comments regarding 9.6?
No questions, but again, just echo what everyone else is saying, and thank you for the hard work and for the dedication to this process and for the work of the entire team.
Thank you, President Proudfit. All right, I don't have any questions or further questions and comments other than a big thank you again to everybody. That said, I do need a motion to approve the Advanced Placement International Baccalaureate and Dual Enrollment World Languages textbook adoption to the following vendors: Dual Enrollment Japanese, Chang Sui, Adventures in Japanese 1 through 3, Dual Enrollment Sign Language, Dawn Sign Press, Signing Naturally Units 1 through 25.
I will motion to approve the Advanced Placement, IB, and Dual Enrollment World Languages textbook adoption for the following vendors: Dual Enrollment Japanese, Chen Su, Adventures in Japanese 1 through 3, Dual Enrollment Sign Language, Dawn Sign Press, Signing Naturally Units 1 through 25.
I will second.
Ms. Donner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second by Mrs. Rooks. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Proudfit.
Yes.
Motion passes with 4 yeas. Thank you, board members. Dr. Hernandez, Ms. Piazza, thank you both. And again, thank you to all the stakeholders who are involved. All right, moving on to section 10, discussion items. 10.1, first read of policy section IJNDB. I do have some public comment tied to this item. Typically when we go through this process,
Unknown participant is now exiting.
We have lost President Proudfit, so we'll finish this meeting with the 3 of us. We'll hear from the district. If the district has any presentations tied to 10.1, we'll hear from public comment or the community, and then board members' comments and questions. Dr. Hernandez. You moved on me.
Quickly, yes. Good evening, Clerk Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Summers, guests, and cabinet. This evening's first read of policy IJNDB, use of technology resources in instruction, includes updated technology language and references additional federal laws designed to protect student data and privacy. The largest update to policy IJNDB includes language specific to generative artificial intelligence. Before addressing the specific language in policy, I'd like to ask Mr. Molino to share an explanation of AI.
Mr. Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Summers, cabinet and guests. AI, artificial intelligence, a lot of us know it as an AI assistant or a virtual chat box. It is a software application that uses artificial intelligence to perform tasks and automate workflows to help save time. An artificial intelligence chatbot uses machine learning language to generate dialogue and respond to inquiries inputted by the user, also known as prompts. And I can go into more details into beyond the policy, which one the district will be using, and that is Microsoft's Copilot. That is included in our licensing agreement. That is beyond the scope of the actual policy. The purpose of the policy is to put the guidelines in place for us to be able to enforce the guidelines that we will use with staff. And there will be staff that have access to Microsoft Copilot's platform. And a simpler way to use it or to describe it is probably everybody in this room right now has a smartphone, whether it's Android with Siri, Google with Google. It's Google's background for AI is Bard. So if you do a search in a Google website or on your Android phone, it's going to Google's Bard platform. Microsoft partners with ChatGPT, and that's what the backend for Copilot is.
Thank you for that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Molino. Policy language highlights the importance of proper use and preparation in the digital age as we see careers and jobs being transformed by AI in the workplace in areas such as robotics, healthcare, and engineering. Policy language speaks to the critical nature of responsibility when using and considering use for instructional purposes. The purpose of this policy is to be clear that approval of AI programs for teachers and staff is required. Currently, as Mr. Molino shared, Microsoft Copilot is the only AI program approved for the use by any Peoria unified staff, and there are no AI programs approved for student use. At this time, school leaders and teachers are receiving guidance on appropriate staff usage and what AI is and what it is not. As an illustration, you may recall when social media first became or burst on the scene, schools and districts were largely advised not to engage. And you can see now what the social media use among students and youth has become. And so this is a great example of what being proactive could lead so far as having best practices in place. Policy language provides the parameters and the guardrails for use by staff. Should the board approve policy language that establishes these parameters, the next step would include community and parent communication and outreach. Additionally, Peoria Unified anticipates working with the Business Advisory Group to further understand the need for career preparation and the impact of AI on many career paths in which businesses and companies anticipate needing students to be prepared for as they select and pursue their career options. The parameters and guidelines in proposed policy language serve as a start to being proactive to ensure appropriate use along with strict compliance of student and data privacy laws. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. Thank you, Mr. Molino. Board members, before we get into our questions and comments, I do have some public comment tied to this line item. And first public comment comes from Ms. Janelle Bowles. Okay, I'll keep her stack here.
Oh, there she is.
There she is. All right. Welcome.
I have to plug my phone in. The meetings get long. Good evening, board and staff and parents and grandparents, as a professional and a gatekeeper, and in lieu of keeping children safe, I personally love technology, and I want the latest and greatest for our students. But I have some questions I would like to propose. While I haven't had time to read all of these acts and things that have been throughout the years, I did have a chance to read one, and according to Part 312 in this proposal, Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule, or COPA, I believe it's pronounced, under 312.2, there's a definition regarding passive tracking of a child online. AI algorithms tracks children's digital footprints, and I would like more information on if the district can block certain servers or private protected data for the use of protecting private data. And it does not cross or pollinate sensitive information, harming children and breaking laws. While AI can do the work for me, which is great, just as Mr. Molino suggested, if I'm talking about pizza, it's going to bring up pizza, right? We know that. In writing a report for work, well, I've already had the education to write a report. I would like for the students to be able to think for themselves and that not take the place of, and that be monitored, because they need to learn how to write a report, right? We're here to teach them. And to learn from themselves, as well as some of you may be aware of something called top of memory. I tell my daughter, don't look up a recipe online. This is the best example I can think of. And the reason being is the first one that pops up is somebody paid for that. So is the information we're giving children facts, or did somebody pay just to put that information there? So that's just something that we really need to, look into. So I'd like to propose that the board do a study session in order to get more information about AI. And then also to interject several bias audits along the way rolling this out. Because as we know, it can be whoever puts in the information, it can be biased toward whoever puts in the information in, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowles. All right, next public comment tied to this line item comes from Mr. Jeff Toby. Welcome, sir.
Yes, hello again. Just echoing what Mrs. Bowles said, a study session would probably be good. I think there's a lot of parents that have some curiosity about this policy, about AI in our district. Obviously, it's here, and it's very advantageous in a lot of different career fields. And I think that what it means for education, as Dr. Hernandez was alluding to, we need to kind of look at it. What does it mean for our students? What does it mean for our staff? And I think a study session with industry professionals coming in, talking about what that looks like moving forward. Obviously, right now, Copilot being the only thing for our staff, but that's right now. Where are we going to move forward? So why don't we, as you said, be proactive and have a study session with parent involvement, employee involvement, with industry professionals, and discuss what it looks like moving forward. Maybe have a logic map as far as what we want to do in the direction that Peoria wants to go with the use of AI. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next public comment tied to this line item comes from Ms. Todd. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. In talking about this particular AI policy document, I really appreciate all the thoughtful that has gone into this policy document. It's very wise to be proactive to establish the perimeters in the use of AI in this district. I have many concerns with AI as part of the education system and the teaching and learning in our school districts. But it's part of our education and business world. It's already there. We do need a policy that will establish what we wish and the perimeters of what we don't wish, the things we do not need. I recommend that this policy move into a study session or a retreat or whatever title you want to put this into, that the board with the cabinet to deeply determine the words necessary to form the policy and how it will fit into the next strategic plan for the Peoria School District. To be proactive and establish the guidelines is critical to continuous improvement and growth for our district. It would be wise to include community input from the many experts that we have on AI in our community. I have major concerns with NAU and with many of our state universities. I have read the NAU May 24th document on generative artificial intelligence in K-12 education. It is well done. To the pros and cons of AI as a system are laid out, the risks are there, established in the terms, the biases are listed. It is important to look at this. Excellent study for our superintendent, our board, our administrative leaders, our building leaders, staff, and the community. Please wrestle with the policy wording that assures this policy will help the district achieve the continued improvement that we're all looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Todd. That is the last public comment tied to this line item. We'll move on to board members' questions and comments. I know President Proudfit is no longer with us, so it is the three of us. Mrs. Rooks, questions, comments?
Yeah, I guess I'll go into the first question, Mr. Molino. You mentioned Microsoft Copilot platform, that it was something to do with the licensing, I think is what you said, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Mr. Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks, correct. Our licensing agreement with Microsoft, where we get all our operating system licenses in Office 365, includes Copilot. And one of the things in regards to Copilot and the benefit for it using it as an enterprise level, which is different than when you as an individual go directly to ChatGPT, for example, the prompts stay within the enterprise boundaries. And so then the Copilot does not grab the prompts and does not add it to the language learning model. And then also when a user, a teacher, for example, today I used it, I went to it, when it grabs it and authenticates that I am an employee of Peoria Unified, at that point in the transaction, it de-identifies me. So then within Copilot, it does not know that I'm K. Molino at Peoria Unified. It's just a generic number. Once I do a search or a prompt and I close out that session, whatever I entered in that prompt disappears. They do not cache it, they do not store it, they do not keep it, they do not add it to the language learning model.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. And I think reading through the policy language, that's where I'm kind of struggling with, is just because I do think that it would be better to have a study session on it, explaining that process, explaining what it's for, because in the policy, it does state proper use can be effective, enhancing student learning, and then it talks about in here that providing AI benefits to all students. It mentions in here, teachers will have relevant lessons. So I think diving deep into what that would look like in a school setting, because I've talked to a couple of parents that were concerned about it. I've talked to a couple of teachers. They were the teachers were kind of like, oh, I didn't know we were looking into this. We were on summer break and coming back and you're like, AI. So I do think that a study session is, I guess, a better option so that we really can dive deep into it. Because once we do open this door, we need to make sure that we have all of the information provided to us, the safeguards, so that our families are aware of it, the teachers are aware, and our principals as well. Because for me, I understand the usage that teachers might use with it and helping in their daily classroom work. But for me, for it to be in front of a student, I know that they have been working on not wanting kids to use the chat. They want the kids to use their critical thinking skills to work on their essays in the classroom. So just reading the language of this, I just don't want to go down that road of opening it up to our students I guess, relying on the AI programs. I want them to learn to rely on their thought process and working through the assignments. And that's just where I would just think it would be better for making such a huge decision like this versus a policy having an actual study session on it. Sorry, that was a lot.
No.
Mr. Sandoval,
Yes.
if I may,
Yeah.
Mrs. Rooks, I just want to be clear that there is no expectation that teachers utilize AI in their classrooms. As you know, we have new curricular resources that have technology embedded that are designed to meet the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 needs of our students. So while they're on summer vacation or what have you, there would be no expectation with this policy language that they would need to use this in their instruction. But we have many teachers coming to us from other districts, coming to us having been to conferences, coming to us from having, reading information online and learning about different parts and pieces. And so the importance of this is establishing those parameters on when we have a lot asking questions. And to speak to your piece on the student voice and the student writing component, you may recall in November of 2022 when ChatGPT launched, English teachers, myself included, we wondered the exact same thing. How am I going to know when I assign an essay that they go home on their home computer and they do that and it comes in? And as an English teacher, that's something we really care about. And so the questions began then about how is it that we really look at this from a digital age, from a technology is here in that proactive space, to be sure that we are protecting the integrity of academic spaces. And of course, there's always the plagiarism component as well. So the teachers that are really looking to be proactive to understand how can I tell if a student used some program outside or however they may have gotten there, but those particular pieces. But I just wanted to be clear that there would be no expectation at this point that they would be required to use this, because the expectations we have is deep learning in our new curricular resources.
Okay, and that's where it gets confusing, because in the policy, it just says teachers should include relevant lessons on correct and responsible use of AI, and then it even has the use of AI programs in the classroom should be approved by site and district administrators. So it's like if there is AI programs that are brought, right, to a site or district administrator, what are those programs? Looking at, I think that as a governing board, when we're looking at a policy like this, I think that we should be aware, we should have those experts in front of us explaining the different AI programs out there, because just for me personally, I don't want to approve something if I don't know what's going to be in that program. That's kind of where my mind always goes. I know you guys say that you're just looking at the Copilot platform, but that language there is opening the door to other AI programs, and I think that's why just being aware of the study session on it, and like with, I mean, it even in here, the use of AI systems should comply with FERPA. I have questions regarding that. Like, I don't know if that's another legal aspect, because families are supposed to have all access to students' educational records. And if they're inputting stuff into that AI, how do we get that to the family? So like, that's the kind of questions that legal or study session diving deep into it, because if it's out there and it's coming into the workforce, I think looking at it from a hearing from the experts, hearing from our teachers, because they're the ones that are in the classroom all day, the principals, and then getting maybe feedback from the parents, like how do they feel about it? I just think that that's a better outlook of a study session versus rushing right into a policy. So I don't know. Sorry, I just kept rambling on again.
Can I add on and ask to kind of piggyback on some of the things that you're saying? So I feel like this is two issues. We have the issue of the policy, which it sounds like the policy we want to get in place to set the parameters. To give the example that you gave of you gave that, right? Social media, is that there were no parameters on it. And so really putting guardrails and parameters on what can be used once we get to that point, it's really important that we put that in place. And that's what this line item about is the policy and the guardrails we're going to put on. And then the separate issue is what is that AI it's not applications, but what is it that we're going to use? How are we going to use it? That I know Mrs. Todd mentioned the NAU the guidance. There's excellent examples, and that's of how it can be used from the teacher's perspective, student perspective, and how guardrails can be put on it to avoid the risks of the plagiarism and that type of thing. So I guess I was saying these are two different things. I think absolutely going into the field of AI, having a study session on how the district would be using it in the classrooms and so forth, so that our community can understand it, but then the board can understand it too. But that approving, it's my understanding that approving a policy doesn't mean that we're approving the use of AI in a specific way in the classroom, that would be something to be done at a later date. So, am I correct with that? I don't know if
Absolutely. I think what I'm hearing is the question is, do we have to do this right now, independent of additional information that can be gathered and synthesized and discussed at an upcoming study session? And I think certainly that's an option for us, is to slow this down. We're not necessarily bound by a legislative expectation at this point in time. We are, again, as has already been stated, desiring a more proactive approach. So we're happy to engage with the experts and more conversation, more feedback, et cetera, as we work to craft the most responsive and effective policy possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I mean, just hearing about the Microsoft Copilot platform, how are we going to be utilizing it? Like, I think diving deep into that. And then, you know, for me, if I see in a language use of AI programs in the classroom, like that's opening the door. And so that's where I think if we're going to be bringing the AI into the schools, I think we need to dive deep into what those programs look like, especially with different age appropriate levels. We have, you know, kindergarten through 12th grade. How does that look for, because that's questions that a lot of parents are going to have. I mean, is this going to be opening the door for AI programs in kindergarten? Is it, I mean, because that's what the language is saying. It's use of AI programs in the classroom. So that I think is just what I think needs to be dived deep, since this is such a new thing that's being grasped in our world. I think that it's good for us to have a diver deep. So
No, thank you for that. And I think along the lines of what everybody is saying, I mean, for me, I'm an early adopter when it comes to technology, and but I know that everybody reacts to technology a little bit differently. And I mean, I certainly don't mind that, you know, the ability, right, to have a conversation with others around one, obviously protecting the integrity of academia and integrating, you know, for me, this exciting technology that is already here, and including, you know, it's in this room right now. But you know, how we leverage that to ensure student success while, you know, protecting, you know, all the young lives that we serve throughout the Peoria Unified School District. I mean, Mr. Molino, for me, I mean, I know we're already, AI is already here, and then from a network perspective and our redundancy, and I think even that could be part of the conversation, is understanding how we're already, you know, have different layers of security to combat against a lot of the questions that may arise, you know, due to the AI conversation, right? So that said, I mean, it's, you know, I do appreciate the proactiveness, though, in and around, you know, building those guardrails, you know, around this technology. I do have a question around, you know, a public commenter brought up NAU, and I believe it's Dr. Getzton, who used to be in the Phoenix Union High School District, is kind of leading that work up there. I'd be curious to understand, I mean, even if he had a lens, you know, on this this policy, just to get his feedback on it as well, you know, as a thought. But all that said, you know, for me, it's exciting times for sure, but how we do it in, again, well, protecting the integrity of academia and ensuring the success and safety, you know, of our students, teachers, and staff. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions. more than willing to have deeper discussions, though, as we move forward. So thank you.
Yeah, I was
go
going
ahead.
to piggyback off of kind of what you mentioned about, I appreciate your perspective on how you are, so accepting of that technology for us, you're ready to drive it, but how you acknowledge that there are some others that are not quite there yet, or there's parents that have those different viewpoints of, they first want their children to learn how to think for themselves before going towards the AI. So I think that that's the line of what does that look like. So I like that you brought up that perspective. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Go ahead. No, that's okay.
Okay, so one of the public commenters was concerned about student use, but again, you mentioned this is for staff only, so I appreciate that. As we're looking to this, we're making sure our staff fully understand how to use this and put the before we even and then also educating the parents before this ever goes out to students. So I appreciate that. And once we have more of a study session on the AI, the uses and that type of stuff, we can have a deeper dive on what that looks like. I can say that I've been a part of some webinars where they've talked about the AI and the use and had teachers talk about specifically how they've integrated it, how they've used a stoplight system to say, no, you can't use any AI in this project. Yellow, you can use it for this, and then green, you can use it all. So there are systems, and then I've been on calls where they've been talking about AI and policies and how to integrate it into districts across the nation. So I know that there's a lot of research out there, and which is why all the teachers are coming back from the conferences. I know ASBA, at least the last 3 conferences, they've been talking about AI. And then there's a big pre-conference, I believe, at the pre-conference in September. They're going to be addressing AI in lots of different formats. So I know it's definitely out there. So that's as far as for professional development, and I know all of us board members have access to that. And I know we could probably bring forward a lot of that information in a study session on AI. But I have seen where they have said that AI one of the great things about it is it can be used as another learning application for the students to really push them along in their achievement, and they've seen some really positive results with that. So as we look towards, as we look towards actually using this, I'd be curious if we're doing like pilot programs or that type of thing. But I know as far as for the policy, because that's the line item we are on. Mr. Molino, I sent you an email. Sorry, it was at the last minute. And Teresa, or Dr. Hernandez, I forgot you were on this as well as far as the presentation of the line item. But I did ask about in there in the language that the relevant policies in the U.S. and Arizona, one of them being the SIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act, and I think this would help cover a lot of individuals' concerns with any type of data. The FERPA, the COPA, the PPRA, and then there was 3 Arizona revised statute. And I just didn't know if maybe as we're looking at this policy, if we can talk to our lawyer and see if those need to be referenced throughout here, because what's highlighted, I believe, is language we came up with that has not yet been reviewed by a lawyer. So that was my question.
Mr. Sandoval, Mrs. Ewing, the language in yellow on the beginning of the policy revision is the original language that the governing board and district approved in 2018. That language has not changed. Then as you scroll down, the cloud-based systems, that's a change by ASBA. And then in blue, in the second page, that, and then the paragraph for generative AI programs in red, those are changes by ASBA. Then towards the bottom of the 3rd page and top of the 4th, The policy regulation highlighted in yellow, that is once again Peoria Unified language that has not changed since 2018. And then SIPA, COPA, FERPA, and the statutes that you mentioned are in red at the end of the policy revision. And then there was one, I believe, one or two of the statutes that you said, I think one of them was not listed here. So we will look into that one and determine why ASBA did not include that one statute.
Okay, great, thank you. Because I think that will then, since those are already things in place that will help folks know that it's in policy as well, that we're staying within the guidelines of the law. Thank you.
So, pardon me, Clerk Sandoval, sorry. I guess, had one comment and then a question on the bottom of that policy. I guess the comment would be, I would love to see, like, with a study session, not only the aspects of how AI can help students, but also what are the negative effects. I think we need to look at that research as well, just because I know that even as parents, when we're talking to our pediatricians, our kids, there's effects of sitting in front of a screen for too long. So I just think that looking at the research out there on some of the cons or negative effects of AI usage in front of our students is another good point. And then the bottom, it has parent notification. That is, I guess, the original policy, and it says that parents will be notified of the policies regarding the use of technology and the internet while at school. Parents will also be notified of their ability to prohibit the student from use of technology and the internet while at school, in which covered information may be shared. So I didn't know with adding in the language of an AI, if that would be included in the technology piece, or if that needs to also be looked at with our legal team of notifying parents. So I don't know, sorry. You're looking at me, sorry.
Brooks. Yes, so annually in these student handbooks that require parent sign off through the parent portal, that's where those pieces are. And so yes, on the attorney piece and ensuring that that language is correct and how we're being really clear and transparent about what it is that parents are agreeing to. And your comment about parents and the opt-out component is accurate as well.
Okay, so like looking at when they're notified of technology and internet while at school, will there be, I guess, an additional piece of notifying once we have a study session or whatever of AI and how that looks, I guess?
Mr. Sandoval, Mrs. Brooks, I would anticipate the answer to be yes, but until we see what that final policy looks like, I wouldn't do more than anticipate.
Okay, all right. So maybe another study session question, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all that I had questions on, so thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing? And if no further questions, comments? Dr. Hernandez, Mr. Molino, thank you both. Moving on to 10.2. First read of policy section GCQC. Ms. Fesley, we do have public comment tied to this line item. So after Ms. Fesley presents, we'll listen to public comment, then we'll get into board member questions, comments. Ms. Fesley, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Clerk Sandoval, members of the board. Tonight, I am bringing forward as a first read policy GCQC, which is going to update and addresses our professional resignations and liquidated damages that has been a topic of conversation this summer. What you have before you are the policy that I want to look at first, and then we've also put in the regulation. And the regulation are the steps and the processes that we would follow. And so the first item that you see up on the screen is the policy itself, where we have added the piece about promotions. And if you see it in red, letter E, internal or external promotion to a position that involves supervision or advancement in title. And then we've also added any exceptions are at the superintendent's discretion. So that was the one area that I heard loud and clear from earlier in June, that was an area that we would like to look at. If we could pull up policy GCQC, the regulation, this is where we're capturing the steps and the tiered system that we discussed at the June meeting. And if you go down, there are two separate areas that I'd like to highlight tonight, where we first have a tiered system for certified employees if we were going to charge liquidated damages. We would first look at policy, we would look at those areas that we would be able to waive, and if we could not waive based off of policy, then we could recommend the tiered system. So, for example, number one, there would be no charge to certified employees who sign their contract for the upcoming school year and submit a resignation to Human Resources by May 1. Number two, there would be a $500 charge for certified employees who sign their contract and submit a resignation to Human Resources between May 2nd and June 30th. Then it goes to $750 for someone that would resign between July 1 and the start of the employee contract. And then the last one would be charging the full $1,500 for certified employees who sign their contract, submit that resignation to Human Resources after the start of the employee's contract. We have then followed the same process for administrators, where theirs is slightly different because the charge for administrators is a little larger, goes to $2,000. So we would recommend no charge for administrators if we had a resignation prior to by the May 1st deadline, $500 between May 2nd and May 30th, $1,000 for administrators who choose to leave between June 1st and June 30th, and then the $2,000 that starts at their start of their contract, which is usually July 1. So with the tiered system, I believe this is a first attempt at listening to the many comments that we had in June and looking at, do we go with liquidated damages? Do we not have liquidated damages? So this is our first attempt, and I'm open to questions, comments, and feedback.
Thank you, Mrs. Vesley. As stated earlier, we do have public comment tied to this line item, so we'll go through that first before we get into governing board questions and comments. So the first public comment tied to this line item is it Charmel, is it Bolstag? Bolster, okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Clerk Sandoval, Board, Cabinet, and all visitors here. I just have a couple of things in reading over this policy I'd like to bring to your attention. The first thing that in reading over it that I found is there are two instances where I found it very cumbersome. The language was very cumbersome. Sometimes the language is not very clear, or some of the words in there are not, the definitions are not that clear to me as a retired educator and a layperson. But the first instance I found is on that page 1 in letter B and E were almost identical in context, except that letter B includes, quote, a movement to a new contract template. If you compare that to E, they're both almost the same with just that one distinction. I'm not sure, that seems rather redundant to me, and I'm not sure why that's there. The other concept that I found, or term I found on there, was later on, I think it was on the last page, where it talks about the service benefit honorarium. And I have no idea what that is. Of course, there are a lot of things that, even as a retired educator, and I've taught in several different states, I have no concept until I came here to Arizona. But I have no idea exactly what that means and what that is. So I guess basically my first comment would be that I find some of the language kind of cumbersome, and some of the definitions, it's not clear and concise, is what I guess I'm basically saying. Second thing, and maybe more importantly, the question that did come to my mind in thinking about this whole concept was, you know, I was wondering, is this a growing trend in our school districts? Is this a growing trend that teachers or administrators are breaking their contracts before the year is up? or before the year even gets started. So I was thinking, all right, what would be the best thing to do to find out? And when are they breaking their contract? Is it at the end of the year before their new contract starts? Or is it in the middle of the year? So my question and my concern to the board would be, you know, maybe you should take a look at the trend of this and see, is it a growing trend? Is it getting worse? Take a look over the last 5 years and see how many teachers have resigned and broken their contract. Whether it's for retiring or whatever, just so you can get an idea how many teachers are leaving before their contract is up. Why are they leaving? And, you know, you may find that there's a problem here that's more inherent than you realize, particularly if the teachers are, I know my time's up. I know, especially if teachers are breaking their contract before it even starts. Thank you.
I appreciate your time. All right, next public comment comes from Ms. Todd. Welcome.
Good evening again. In looking at this particular document, I wanted to say first, I really appreciate that Laura did take the comments that came from the board before and put together the information in 2 different kinds of formats so that you could really look at what was going on. Going beyond that, let me just say this. I find this absolutely ludicrous, but that's me. I come from another state and I've worked across many states. Why are we doing something negative against those who are trying to move on, usually with another system or with our own? As Sharma, as she said, why is this happening in the first place? Are we not supporting? Do we need to change our culture? What are the reasonings behind this? What can we do to make this a better place to work? Or can we actually support people into other positions? There's something going on here that we need to dig a little deeper on. But I don't believe we need to do anything that sets an environment that is negative for staff. It is hard to gain good staff in a school district anywhere in the United States at this time. Anything we can do to make things better and make the better better would really be advantageous to all of us. So for me, I don't like either one of them. I want this gone. I want us to look at how we encourage the remaining teachers here, and especially those teachers who are really, really good. Why do we put something negative in front of them? I don't get it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Todd. Appreciate it. Next public comment comes from Ms. Trina Berg.
Good evening, Clerk Sandoval, members of the board, cabinet, Dr. Summers, who's not here right now. My name is Trina Berg. I'm the president of the Peoria Education Association. Wow, I slurred that, sorry. Peoria Education Association. I have spoke multiple times about liquidated damages. PEA has always taken the stance that we would like them gone completely. We don't think they belong in this district. This policy is much better than the one we have, for sure. But we have always taken a stance that liquidated damages should be gone. I did do a quick survey of my members, and my members agree. 57.5% of the members who did respond to the survey that I sent out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, all agreed that they should just be gone. I do appreciate that if this policy does stay, where we have like a tiered approach, my members did also support the idea of putting an advancement to an administration position or something like that as a reason to not have liquidated damages. But PEA's stance is we should not have liquidated damages. I would appreciate another look at the possibility to get rid of them completely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. All right, final public comment tied to this line item comes from just Mia. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. So I just wanted to comment and say that I think the policy and the regulations look good. It's fair, it's sensible. You're allowing employees to do what's best for themselves and their families while also having some accountability. And accountability is always good. I would agree with the other two commenters that you should figure out why teachers are breaking contract and quitting in the middle of the school year. I know the last school that I worked at in the school district, I think 2 or 3 teachers quit in the middle of the, but from the first day of the school year to, I think it was like October. And so it just really leaves the school in a bind. So, and the students, obviously, because now the students are left with a long-term sub or people coming in and out. And so while I understand why those teachers do end up leaving, I can definitely understand that, but it does put the students and the school in a bind. So I think some accountability is good. I don't think zero accountability would be good by not having any of those regulations in place for that. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. All right, that ends public comment tied to this line item. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Ewing?
Okay, a couple questions. I guess it would be probably Mrs. Vesley. Can you clarify, since a commenter brought this up, the difference between the B and E that she was referring to? I think it's on the policy GCQC revised PDF, and it's on page 1 if you want to be able to bring that up so that community can see. I think if those are what she was referring to.
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Ewing and members of the board. When the policy was first created, the governing board that was intact at that time only wanted internal promotions. If we're moving towards looking at the advancement for employees, I believe that we could take B out. And I also appreciate the fact that we looked at where it says a movement to a new contract template. There are districts where they will look at an external promotion, but they also want a new contract template. And what that looks like, for example, in our district, let's say we have a certified teacher that might get a position of a teacher on assignment / administrator. We have about 4 or 5 of those in our district. They're still on a certified contract, but they're serving and learning underneath our administrators to then move into an assistant principal role within the next couple of years. So there are some districts where that position and that person would, they stay on their certified teacher contract with additional days. And some districts would not see that as a promotion. I believe our district, we would see that as a promotion. So that's what that language of a new contract template means, that in some districts, they would want to see the person going from a certified contract to an administrator contract. So I'm happy if the board would like to provide additional feedback. I believe that B could be removed because we already are looking at internal promotions. We're wanting to honor our staff members and employees that are getting those promotions outside of the district.
If you did remove B, would you need to still kind of incorporate the language of B where it says new contract template? I just didn't know for that internal piece. And I believe that part of this, even though we may not understand it, that the employees are explained this process as well, because the contract template sounds like that's more of like an infrastructure. Well, it's not really infrastructure, but that's more of like the district language with regards to their contracts. So,
thank you, Mrs. Ewing. So if you're looking at that particular language of new contract template, that would be, I would be looking for comments or feedback from you if you would like that added in. I did not choose to add it in because it allows human resources a little bit more flexibility to look at what I would deem as, or we would deem as, a promotion to an administrative role. If we had new contract template, it's going to be more limiting for us when we make those decisions. As for the question about, do we have those conversations with our employees every time we get a resignation, middle of the year, after someone has signed their contract? We're either emailing them, we're calling them, we're talking through, what is this? One of the things I don't like to do is to have to charge liquidated damages. So we go back to the waivers and we go back to looking and really having those deep conversations. If there's medical needs, we're sending those people over to benefits. Is it an FMLA? Can we work through their rights that they have through our insurance, and all of those pieces to try to ensure that we're being just good stewards and just listening and really trying to help and understand. So again, I'm looking for feedback. If you would like contract template added, I'm happy to do that. It is going to be, I think, a little bit more difficult though in our district.
As far as for my opinion, I think if you keep the language on E, if it gives you more flexibility, then I certainly would support that in that. Let's see, we had another question, but I'm not quite sure what she was asking. I thought she was asking about service benefit daily rate. There was another that.
I'd be happy to talk a little bit about the service benefit, Mrs. Ewing. This does not have anything to do with liquidated damages in our district. When an employee has been here, and it depends on when you were hired, if you've been with the district for 10 years or more and you leave the district, whether you're resigning or whether you are retiring, you are allowed to earn discretionary days that you may have built up. And there is the formula here in board policy that our payroll department follows to then pay out the employee. So it's a really nice benefit to honor those people that have been in the district for the 10 years. You'll also see if you were hired, I think it says prior to July 1 of 2006, you have to be in the district for 5 years. So it's a really nice benefit that if you're saving your days, your discretionary days, you will be paid that out per the formula that you see below.
Okay, thank you. I just thought that was an opportunity to educate. So, as far as the liquidated damages and everything, I really appreciate all the work that's gone into putting together this. I did have some conversations to try to understand. I like that. Well, I like that. I know that our teachers get their contracts early, and so the tiered approach gives them a little bit more flexibility, absolutely. But I did have some conversations where the numbers of individuals that are leaving between the start of school and then the end of schools is really not that much. And I remember you made a comment last time when you did this presentation, is that the prior liquidated damages amounts that we had in place really didn't seem to be deterring anyone from resigning. And so at some point, it's like, well, then if that's not keeping those individuals, certainly we never want to punish them, but if it's not keeping them at the rates that we had before, then what is the purpose of those liquidated damages if it doesn't seem to do what it was initially intended? I also had some conversations with some individuals just talking about because I was very concerned about the burden that it puts on teachers when we have people leave in the middle of the school year and they have to cover classrooms, and that if that is impacting our student learning, that's like a big concern, and that we don't want staff leaving. But it's my understanding that we don't have that, and even though he's not here at the moment, but I know that Dr. Summers did say that he would rather look at how can we bolster up and improve our teacher retention and retainment efforts and put all of our efforts there as opposed to imposing these liquidated damages. So that's kind of my viewpoint. I certainly I'd be in support of this, but if the board also wanted to move towards getting rid of liquidated damages whatsoever, I think that as long as that is manageable by our district staff and HR and staffing and so forth, that I would want to look towards that. And a compromise would be adopting this with the idea that we would, within a year, have a pretty big, robust program in place where we're no longer seeing people leave in the middle of the school year, except for pretty extenuating circumstances. So then this becomes not needed at all. So, and to move away from liquidated damages. So I'd like to end up eventually there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Ricks, questions, comments?
Yeah, I guess I have a question on, kind of going off of what she said and what are the thoughts of our administration, our HR department. I'd love to hear the thoughts of, what your direction would be, because you're the one that's in the HR department going through all of this process. How does that look? And I do like the idea of if we move forward with doing this for a year, looking at why are teachers leaving in the middle of the year, because I think that is important, but then also affecting students. I know it affected my student this last year, so it's a lot of work. So I think that I'd love to hear the administration's point on this too.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. That's a great question. I have spoken with members from our Principals Association. I also have spoken with Trina and our Teachers Association, as well as Amy Rosen, who is one of our co-directors for CTA, which is our other teachers organization. Both of our teacher organizations would, as you heard tonight, would prefer to move away from liquidated damages. I believe it will show value to our employees. We are working together very nicely as a team and really working on how do we collaborate, how do we show value, that we value our employees, but also understand that there may be times where they need to leave. From an HR perspective, it would be a lot easier not having to charge liquidated damages. The tiered approach is going to be a little bit more cumbersome because you're going to have to look at the dates. You're going to have to decide, is it $500? Is it $750? Is it $1,000? And it'll be a little bit more taxing on our payroll department, which is the department of 5. When I spoke with the Principals Association, they very much appreciated a tiered approach, and they also appreciated allowing opportunities for growth, because we're all about growing individuals and growing up our teachers to become teacher leaders and moving into our leadership position. So they were very thankful that that is being brought back in. There were concerns from administration about teachers leaving at, let's say, the very start of school. We may have a situation where someone could resign within the next 2 weeks, or the week before school starts, or 2 days before school starts, and we wouldn't have time to find teachers. So that was a concern from our administrators. They believed that they would like to support the tiered model and see where it goes. Our teachers are asking, again, to remove it completely. I think that'll show value to our employees and then allow us to work through those unique situations. So it really is going to be at the purview of the board tonight.
Thank you for explaining very detailed on all of it.
May I also share, Mrs. Rooks, that I did reach out to our other districts, because you would all ask questions about what do other districts do that don't have the liquidated damages, and do they turn in the individuals for unprofessional conduct to the Arizona Department of Education. The districts that I reached out to that don't have liquidated damages, they are not turning people in or reporting them to the Department of Ed unless it is sudden job abandonment. They're not giving the district time to find an employee. So that's really the one situation where they are reporting to the Department of Education.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I was going to touch on, I spoke to our neighboring district, one of the board members for Dysart School Board, and they have the liquidated damages, they don't have the tiered approach, but she had explained, like in the past, I believe that they didn't have it, and that it kind of created a little bit of, it just was a pattern of so many kept like resigning through their contracts and not coming back. It just kind of was like a whoo, big whirlwind of it. So they were like, okay, let's revisit this and look at what can we have for, so I think someone mentioned an accountability piece. So I do think that a tiered approach is the policy read on it. And then obviously, like, I do think it is being proactive on why are the teachers leaving, I think is another big point to make, because if there's something that they're leaving that maybe we could look at in keeping them here versus going to this route. I think that if we're just being proactive and figuring out, asking them, why are you leaving? What can we make them to stay? While also having an accountability piece, we're kind of having that balance, I think. So I don't know if that's only comments I have, so thank you.
Can I ask a question, Ms. Brooks? So on something that you were asking, because I know a lot of our conversations have been talking about when teachers leave during the school year. So given this tiered approach, and given what the ASA, what they said, is that they were concerned if people left at the very beginning. So I'm wondering if we could pare this down, if a compromise would be to pare it down even more, and if you look at it, is to only have under certified employees, only have the value if they sign their contract and to submit a resignation to HR after the start of the employee's contract, so it's during the school year, versus having the 500, 750, so 1, 2, and 3 on that would be gone, but then have that language in there so that, because that, it seems like that has been our biggest concern is the ability, is that it starts affecting students when they leave during the school year. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are, because I know that I'd be looking to move, like what you said, eventually to a no liquidated damages provided if we have a very robust teacher retention program in place. So I was just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I guess a couple of thoughts would go through is that looking at, again, I like the principal's perspective, because I look towards what Dysart, I guess, had experienced when they took away completely no liquidated damages. It was almost like chaos because everybody was just then resigning. And so that I don't want to cause an overload, workload on our other staff to try to balance all of that. So that's why I'm looking for a balanced approach. Mm-hmm. And I think with what you're talking about, I know that on the red part, I just went out of it. The red part of, I think it's the other document where it's it's at the discretion of the superintendent was also in the language. Mm-hmm. I think that was on the other page, that any exceptions are at the superintendent's discretion. So like what you're talking about, I don't know if that would be looked at with our superintendent and having a discussion with him as a governing board in that language there too. Having that opportunity for our employees to have a process to go up to the superintendent at his discretion. I think that language is added in red too. So I feel like there's multiple ways, I guess, to walk through if that does happen in that beginning of the school year or the middle of the year, if there is something that might happen, whether it's, a teacher can't afford childcare anymore with their kids, they have kids at home, it's just becoming too much of juggling. That exception, I like that actually added in red, that any exceptions are at the superintendent's discretion, because I think then our superintendent having that opportunity for the employee to meet with the superintendent and then having our Dr. Summers work through it with that employee. I think that is a good option to have as well. Like everything needs to have a balance is what I'm looking for, so that everybody is all on the same page and that it doesn't affect one group versus more than the other, I guess.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand, just so we can make sure that that I understand what you're looking for. So would you be looking to have language in there where liquidated damages could be assigned at the superintendent's discretion? Is that the part, or because we've got kind of two different things here? If the one document, the GCQC revised, gives reasons why liquidated damages can be waived. If we changed, and then certainly one of them is, and exceptions are at the superintendent's discretion. But I thought, and I might just be wrong on how I understood it, but I thought that when you were referring to the superintendent's discretion, it was in reference to applying liquidated damages. But maybe I misunderstood that. I just want to make sure I'm including your thoughts.
Well, it just said right there, let's see, employees wishing to leave before the completion of their contract will be subject to liquidated damages clause contained within the contract unless they meet one of the following exceptions. And then it has the A listed through E, and then at the bottom it says any exceptions are at the superintendent's discretion. So I don't know if that then opens the door for something that's maybe not on the A through E exceptions, if that then can have a process of the employee being able to work that through with the superintendent and having, maybe you can help me what I'm trying to say. I see you shaking your head. So that's what I was kind of looking at, is if we're having on the language on there, adding in red, any exceptions are at the superintendent's discretion, maybe that adding in something of a process where they can, I guess, move up to the superintendent to explain something that might be why the reason they're leaving.
Mrs. Rooks, Mrs. Ewing, I believe you may be talking about an appeal or a waiver.
Yes, yeah.
And so typically, how we work it right now is we read policy, we meet with the individual, we ask and we look to see the reason why they're leaving. We would see whether or not it was something that Human Resources would be able to waive, or we would say we're charging liquidated damages. If there is a concern, our process then would be letting them know that in our current policy that they may write a letter to the board, they may come and speak during public comment and ask the board to waive the liquidated damages. By adding the superintendent, I certainly don't want to speak for Dr. Summers, and I see that he is not here at the moment. In my conversations with Dr. Summers, he is also coming from out of state where they did not have liquidated damages. And so as we are moving forward, I believe that could be a possibility to add that in, but would everyone then be going to Dr. Summers and bypassing Human Resources? It allows that opportunity for an employee to do that, but I believe if Dr. Summers were here, he would probably be asking us to review and really think about whether or not liquidated damages is valuing our employees.
Yeah, I guess, maybe looking into asking Dysart Unified, just because hearing about that process of when they had it taken away, they didn't have liquidated damages, that there were people in the employees, the teachers, that were just leaving constantly. So that's just the only thing that I have in the back of my mind of taking them away completely, is what would that look like in our district? Taking that approach on, again, just that balancing, I think is important because it's our kids too, so.
Thank you for that. I did speak with Dysart last year. They do have a new administrator in Human Resources this year. It just started July 1. I also know Deer Valley just put this into place, I believe it was this year, where they went and moved towards charging liquidated damages. I believe when I spoke with Dysart last year, it was a little bit more challenging because I believe they have a certain date that once you've signed your contract, they will not charge liquidated damages until maybe April 30th or May 1st. It's very similar to ours. And then after that, they started charging. They did talk about how cumbersome that was, but I'm happy to reach out. I don't know that I would have the data right now with the new person coming on board.
Okay. And you said Deer Valley just started looking at a tiered approach, or
No, they just added charging liquidated damages this past year. So they added it into their policy as well. And they have kind of mirrored our policy, but they do not have a tiered system that I'm seeing.
Okay. Did they have a reason why they added it back in?
I believe it was because many teachers were choosing to leave, but we're also coming out of COVID at the time, and they saw that the concern might be, would it deter? Probably similar to reasons why we went to it many, many years ago.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I know you were wanting me to, answer more questions of what you said, but I was trying to.
No, it was great. It was great.
So-
I just wanted to make sure I totally understood. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, thank you both for the questions and concerns. Ms. Vesley, thank you for the responses. For me, I have a couple questions. When we take a look at the regulation, is the difference in timing tied to bullet number 2 in certified employees and bullet number 2 in administrators? Is that just the difference in 10-month versus 12-month employees? Or when you look at, so bullet 2 under certified, the timeline is between May 2nd and June 30th. But under administrators, it's between May 2nd and May 30th.
Yeah,
what I'm
so
saying?
let's take a look at the certified Clerk Sandoval first. So when we looked at the certified, the closer we get to June and July, the more difficult it is for us that we're all fighting for the same candidates and teachers. So we wanted to honor our certified staff to say May 2nd through May 30th. We would charge the $500, and then starting June 1, it goes a little higher. Then July, it goes a little higher. When we look at our administrative staff, they start July 1 and they're year-round. All of our administrators are on a 248-day calendar year-round. And so looking at charging the $500 from May 2nd to May 30th, and then starting June 1 to June 30th is, again, when we start July 1 and we have an administrator leaving, it's going to be difficult for us to find an administrator in June because everyone has already signed contracts. And we don't have as good of a pool, much like our teachers. We don't have a good pool for teachers.
No, gotcha. Thank you for that. For me, I've always, certainly been in support of, I think a public commenter labeled this policy as ludicrous. I've always been in support of moving away from this policy. We haven't been able to realize that. We have been moving in a positive direction. At the time, I did work with Representative Pingarelli was on the board at that time to lessen the dollar amount of the damages, which was at a positive direction in ensuring that that we lean on the great leadership that we have in this district to really foster work environments where our teachers do feel valued and respected and are inspired every day. I do believe that in and of itself is what really influences longevity as it relates to our associates and staying with a particular organization, in this case, Peoria Unified. That said, certainly would still be in support of this policy going away. However, I do appreciate how you've really taken a look at an approach that makes this policy less of a punitive message to our associates, and more of a one, less of that, and while still protecting, right, our classrooms and certainly our teachers, right? Because I think Mrs. Rooks and Mrs. Ewing both brought up if, a teacher does leave, during the year or during April, right? That puts a lot of pressure on our existing teachers without question. So I do appreciate you taking a deep dive and really listening and to everyone's input and moving this in a direction that is, again, that is seen as you know, more of an understanding and, you know, respectful of our associates who may, for whatever reason, make a decision to have to move on, right? And again, while still respecting the classroom. So that said, I don't really have any other questions or comments. I know this is our, I believe, first read, and you know, and there's some questions that have come through, and I'm sure we'll get those responses from you, and then, you know, whether it be in whatever form. But yeah, thank you.
Clerk Sandoval, may I just make one other comment, just something to think about? One, if we're going to move in the direction to have a tiered approach, is it something that you as a board would also like to see to decrease that amount? I know we decreased it several years ago. It was originally for, I think, certified staff was at 2,000, and then we moved it, bumped it down, and administrators were 2,500. So part of what we're doing tonight, you, the board, could provide guidance. Do we want to reduce that? That will show, I think, again, value in our employees. But again, if I'm hearing our certified teachers, their wish is that it is removed. It's a delicate conversation. I appreciate the feedback that you're giving, but it's just something to think about as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, for me, I mean, I would absolutely support not only moving in this direction, but also we can also take a look at the dollar amount of the damages, you know, as a concession is probably not the right word, as a consideration, right, in this policy to even, you know, lessen the feeling that this policy may impose on our associates. So, no, thank you for that. Absolutely would support that. Any other questions, comments?
So just one, and it sounded like, I'm sorry, Heather, I don't know if you're getting ready to say something, or Mrs. Rooks, sorry. And maybe this is just information for the board to come to the board in a Friday report or something, but how many, because you did mention that the dollar amount that we previously had in there was not deterring employees. So if we're specifically looking at that, and we feel like the dollar amount assessed for liquidated damage is not deterring them, we still have the same issue. We still have to find replacements. Now, I guess there's probably some that we may never know about that it does deter them, but they're just not vocal about it. There is that possibility. But I think it might be helpful for the board, let me know, to see the percentages that are leaving during the school year, or maybe it's not even a percentage, but maybe it's the amount of employees who are leaving during the school year, so we can really figure out what we're looking at. And as far as the administrators, I would add those that are leaving probably within that June timeframe as well, because I know that creates more of a difficulty of finding somebody to be in that leadership role. So that then we can really decide how much are we really making an impact.
Yeah, I would definitely support looking at that, because I think we've seen that kind of happening in the human resource report, looking through the resignations that come in. So definitely I'd be open to seeing that, maybe bringing that back with the second read, kind of that information. So then also our President Proudfit, you know, answering those questions. And I did see on the bottom of the, it says adopted July 25th, 2024. So are we going to be second reading that at a July 25th board meeting, or I didn't know on that date?
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. That is tentative. I know we have a study session. I believe there's going to be an executive session. Because we are moving into, we have to have opening the meeting, we were going to bring the HR Governing Board report. I can certainly change that date. What I was looking at is we have waived liquidated damages through July 31st. So come August 1st, if we don't have that second read and it approved, we would be in a position for me to bring individual people back should they be resigning at the start of the school year. Are we waiving or are we charging? So that's why I put the July 25th date. I'm open to suggestions.
No, that's totally fine. I just wanted to know so that I knew what was there, I guess. So totally fine. Yeah.
All right, very good. Any more questions, comments? Ms. Festley, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. All right, moving on to section 11, public comment. Request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. We do have a handful of public commenters. As a matter of housekeeping, public rules of conduct, the board president shall keep control of the meeting and require the speakers and the audience to refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, applause, protests, or other conduct which disrupts or interferes with the orderly conduct of the business of the meeting. Personal attacks on board members, staff, or members of the public are not allowed. It is inappropriate to utilize a public hearing, the public comment segment, or any other agenda items for the purpose of making political speeches. Engaging in such conduct and failing to cease such conduct upon request of the presiding officer will be grounds for ending a speaker's time at the podium or for the removal of any disruptive person from the meeting room at the discretion of the board president. That said, we have 3 minutes per individual. Our first public comment comes from Samuel Stith. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon or good morning.
Good evening.
Yeah, hi. Good. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Sam Stith, all right? I played in the National Basketball Association for the New York Knicks prior to Patrick Ewing, and I'm the vice president of the Retired NBA Player Association in Arizona. Our mission is totally in trying to help kids. That's our whole program, is helping kids in all types of lives. I'm a little concerned about something that happened here recently with Landa, the principal of Peoria High School. Every year for 20 years, she's had me speak to any school she was in to the kids about education, parent, everything. 20 years. I've never met an individual so committed in helping kids, as well as watching out for her staff and the safety of everyone she's involved with. She's a dedicated type of worker, and unfortunately, she can't be responsible for other people's actions, so she's guilty of that, not being responsible. I've dealt with her for almost 18 to 20 years. She's a great friend. She's a heck of a worker. A lot of my kids in my camps, my summer camps, went to this school. And the parents always rave about the conduct of how Landa took care of her kids. And some of them, about 15 of them graduated this year, all sorts of life. Back a while, you had a speaker from Phoenix, Arizona. I wasn't aware outsiders could speak at a board meeting. African-American lady. And it sort of disturbed me when she came out here. Someone invited her for their own purpose. And the whole purpose was to speak on and slander Landa with derogatory remarks regarding something that stays in my mind. She made a statement that Landa did not protect the black basketball players, not the team, but the black basketball players. Like she's protecting the white kids, right? It's so far from the truth that it's mind-boggling that she's allowed to say something like that. She probably did not have no idea for 26 years, Landa's been a model student, problems for 26 years. I get the nerve. This woman has been in this system for 26 years. You got teachers leaving. 26 years of taking care of kids. That's her whole main goal. It's in her DNA. Her mother was a teacher for 35 years. And to come out and talk something like that, but what she did not know that Landa's biological kids, right, grandparents are African Americans. My wife and me. She had no idea. There goes the race card out the window. How am I looking? Oh,
thank you, sir.
Out,
I appreciate your time. I appreciate it.
So get her back on staff. The lady's fantastic. You know, work it out. And I'll come out and do the clinics for her and anybody in your school district.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Wow.
All right, next public comment comes from Just Mia.
Hi, good evening again. I kind of have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to talk fast. First of all, I just wanted to say I'm glad to hear that the Cactus High School coach has resigned. So I have faith that the new AD will hire a great coach and build a great baseball program there at Cactus. The next thing I would like to speak about is Landa. There's not much more that I can say about her great character, hard work ethic, and wonderful mentorship. You've heard it here meeting after meeting, testimony after testimony about how great and impactful she is as a loyal leader in PUSD. As a parent, community member, and former employee of the district, I would like to think that the superintendent, Dr. Summers, who I wish was here to hear my comment, would have a transparent and honest relationship with the governing board. However, it doesn't seem the board is fully aware of what's going on. This should be concerning for all staff and admins in PUSD, because if this can happen to someone as hardworking and upstanding as Landa, it can happen to any of you. Mr. Sandoval, you've known her the longest out of anyone on the board, and I have yet to see you do anything to support her. You know her and her character, and this should be concerning for all staff and admin because you've been on the board for 8 years and you won't stand up for what's right and just. How can staff and admin ever trust you knowing that? It seems like you're all not giving Landa the opportunity to speak and truly know what's going on. If you vote for an executive session, you will have the opportunity to address things and allow transparency. Wouldn't you all rather want to know what's going on than remain willfully ignorant? On another quick note, for parents who want to protect their children and their school from the radical Biden Title IX changes that will be taking place August 1st, text Liberty to 53445. This is Moms for Liberty. They have already won an injunction against the Biden administration, blocking these insane Title IX changes. Anyone can join, moms, dads, guardians, and so on. So if you want your child to be protected under the injunction, text Liberty to 53445 before July 15th. And just to reiterate, you need to vote for an executive session. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Before we go on to the next public comment, I just want to make a quick announcement. I know Dr. Summers wasn't feeling well, and I did get notification that he has proceeded to head home to get better. So we wish him well. Next public comment comes from Ms. Janelle Bowles.
I just want to say thank you for your comments on Landa. She was my neighbor for a long time before she was in the district. Regarding Title IX, I would like the public and the board to know that there are some supports that were mentioned by Jasmia to block the Biden administration by August 1st, which is our deadline. The deadline approaching, we only have 6 days left to do this. Moms for Liberty successfully halted the Biden administration's dangerous Title IX rewrite in court, which would have forced schools to allow boys in locker rooms, girls' locker rooms, and allow them to compete in women's sports or force students to be criminally held liable for conduct that would constitute sexual harassment. A judge ruled Title IX rewrite cannot be enforced at schools that members of Moms for Liberty children attend. So in other words, we need to be a part of Moms for Liberty to come under that blanket of that lawsuit. Within our district, parents, grandparents, dads, moms, all can be part of that. Meaning if you become a member for your child to Moms for Liberty, your school is covered. Join as a member is free. ASAP to protect your children. The judge's deadline is July 15th, so act fast. Text the word Liberty to 53445. Again, text Liberty to 53445. To those who have already joined, thank you. Those who have already joined Liberty, Moms for Liberty, sorry. for helping us protect Arizona schools. Please help us share this information with other concerned parents in our community. Again, that's text Liberty to 53445. It is free. Any parent, grandparent within the Peoria Unified School District who have children in our public schools can text Liberty, the word Liberty, to 53445 and join with this lawsuit that they've already won. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Next public comment comes from Mr. Jeff Toby.
I'm going to pull my comment, thank you.
All right, we have one final comment. We have one final public comment, and it comes from Dolores McCaslin. Welcome.
Now listen, I've waited all night to get up here. I'm like you, I'm tired. And they've stole most of my thunder, but I'm going to do it anyway. Greetings, everybody, board, superintendent, teachers, admin, even the policemen, families here and at home, all the teachers. I come bearing great news, even an added. Arizona has statute 15-1.20 prohibits biological males from participating in girls' sports. What else do we need? Even better news, and I have here the case, State of Kansas versus U.S. Department of Education, case number 24-4041-JWB, B as boy, in case my accent gets you. Repeat, case number 24-4041JB. It has won. And Judge John Brooms, a Kansas federal judge, ruled in favor of the state of Kansas and attorney generals in Alaska, Utah, and Wyoming, and organizations. Moms for Liberty, you can repeat that, text, learn that, 53445. Parents out there in Never Never Land, please pay attention. It protects the girls and women from going and being safe in bathrooms and locker rooms and their speech being violated. The Department of Educational reinterpretation of Title IX would subvert Congress. It's this goal of protecting biological women in education. Listen up, parents. Sign up for Moms for Liberty. Female Athletes United has students in any school. You all know now they can't push this forward. You have till July the 15th. It's a no-brainer. And you know what? As a side note, I don't think boys want to go in girls' bathrooms either. It's just not common sense to do that. And if you're complacent with this, then you agree with this nonsense. Title IX changes. You are leaving our girls and our boys to very vulnerable situations. We are to clothe ourselves with compassion, kindness, gentleness, and patience. And best of all, I came across a shirt that says, with the U.S. so divided, I'm glad to be on the side that believes in God and knows which restroom to use.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your time. All right, that concludes public comments. We will move on to Section 12, informational reports. 12.1, report on upcoming meetings and events. Ms. Ari.
Good evening, Clerk Sandoval, members of the board. Just one highlight for you as it is fast approaching. It's our opening of schools event, as I've been reminding you, but do just want to make sure you have that date and the time saved on your calendar. We look forward to having all of our staff all together, and we have two sessions that we're holding, 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. on Tuesday, August 6th, and so it's a Tuesday this year instead of a Monday. Please reach out if you have any questions, board members. We look forward to having you join us.
Thank you, Ms. Ari. All right, so moving on to 12.2, legislative, state, and local updates. Ms. Myers.
Yes, thank you. Good evening again. Clerk Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Summers, who is not with us at this time, in community. Monday, July 8th marked 120 days until the November 5th, 2024 election. And on May 9th, 2024, the governing board adopted a resolution authorizing a $120 million bond election for Peoria Unified to be held on that same date. Administration has been working with Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office and Maricopa County Elections to meet the published deadlines for ballot language and the voter information pamphlet, as well as publishing the August 9th, 2024 deadline for submitting arguments with respect to the ballot question. I will now ask Mrs. Airy to provide additional information related to tonight's legislative, state, and local updates agenda item. Mrs. Airy?
Thank you, Ms. Myers and Clerk Sandoval, members of the board. Another election update for you at the most local level right here in our governing boardroom. The deadline to file signatures for those candidates vying for one of the 3 open seats on our governing board was also on Monday, July 8th. Following that deadline, we do have 6 candidates who have fulfilled the requirements and submitted signatures to Maricopa County Education Service Agency. The candidates who will officially appear on the ballot are Janelle Bowles, Micah Dyer, Melissa Germscheid, Becky Proudfit, David Sandoval, and Jeffrey Toby. We thank all candidates for their willingness to serve our school district. As I know I share with many, there are certainly districts across the state that aren't so lucky to have those in their community interested in this non-paid volunteer position of serving their community. So we do wish to just thank all candidates for their willingness to step up and to run in the election. A reminder, the last day to register to vote in the general election is October 7th. And of course, a reminder that Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Airy. Thank you, Ms. Myers. Anything else? Good. Okay. All right, moving on to 12.3, Budget Facilities, Planning, and Construction Reports. This report is on our website for your viewing at your convenience. 12.4, District Budget Report for the month of September 2023, also on our website for your viewing at your convenience. Going on to Section 13, Other Business, Board Member Opportunity to readdress agenda items. Mrs. Rooks, any items that you'd like to readdress?
None this evening, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing.
Kevin, I don't know who's be the person to write this down, or Danielle, I don't know. Ms. Rooks, you had requested a study session on AI, so I just want to make sure that that got on the list. Did you still want that?
So I think
We're readdressing items,
Oh,
so we can go to the
readdressing.
next one.
Never mind.
I know it's 9 o'clock, we're all tired, but.
I don't have anything.
Okay. I don't have any items either.
Thank you.
All right, 13.2, requests for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Mrs. Ewan, I'll let you continue along that path there.
I'll let you request that. Okay. I just would like to maybe sometime before November have a study session on what is our plan going forward for the to increase student enrollment, student recruitment, kind of what are those efforts and plans that are, I think that'll probably come with the revision that we're doing of the strategic plan anyway, but I just would like to be able to take a look at that. And that can include like how we're promoting all of our great and wonderful programs, and maybe plan to increase what percentage we're looking to increase. So that would be one item that I would need a second on.
I'll second that.
And then a second item is what is our employee retainment or retention plan. Again, I'm sure that'll come as part of the strategic plan, but I just wanted to make sure that we have that. And I know that Dr. Summers is probably working on putting those things at the right timing. So that's why I say, sometime before November, I think it would be great to have that put before the board in a study session. So I'll need a second on that.
I'll second that as well for you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, Mrs. Rooks, you have any items for this evening?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the just Friday report on 2 items. One is where we're at on the MTSS. I know that last year there were pilot schools, and so I just didn't know where we're at right now, so I don't know if that could be a Friday report to the governing board. So that was one, and then another one is Also, last year, we had, I know Danielle, maybe this is your area with the calendar, the school calendar. I think there is another vote happening in August. So I just didn't know if you could just send in a Friday report what that looks like from that angle too. So I just need seconds on those.
Sure. You guys are clear on the MTSS ask? Yep. Okay. I'll second those.
Thank you. And then I had one is, I don't know, looking at legal advice on the Moms for Liberty case that was just ruled out. So I don't know if that would be in our upcoming executive session.
What I can tell you, just because he's not here, is I asked Dr. Summers if when we have that July 25th meeting, if that's something that can be further clarified in that by the lawyers, and he said that he would let them know. So I'm hoping that will answer that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
So just to formalize that though, and knowing that it's coming, I'll second it just so
thank
it's.
you. Appreciate that. And then the last one is, I would really, really like to have an executive session on Londa with what is going on.
I thought we already had that on the docket. Am I wrong?
I think what we had previously was the process, or I think it was the process of, I'm looking at like an actual executive session to discuss Londa.
Yeah, so I want to say that there is a part of the July 25th executive session that will cover the process. Am I correct on that? I don't think we can have an executive session without first notifying the employee that we're talking about them. There's certain regulations with regards to that.
24 hours notice, so.
Yeah, so maybe we can get more clarification on what's to be included in that executive session. And if we can, if there has to be a vote for just the process of that. I'm not trying to interrupt on what you're asking for, sorry.
Mr. Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks, I believe in the last governing board meeting, that was requested and there was a second. I believe that's on the list that Dr. Summers and President Proudfit during agenda planning are considering. But I believe that was already requested and it had a second during the last board meeting.
Yeah, because I thought that included, go ahead.
So that second, that includes the process of having an executive session on employee and notifying them 24 hours in advance, I guess is that the piece that we're talking about in executive session from the last meeting, if that's what we requested?
Ms. Ruggs, I'll have to go back and listen to the actual request in the second, but the process that you're mentioning, that is board policy or statute procedure for the employee notification within 24 hours.
Yeah, as I'm not mistaken, it also included files, et cetera, right, for that session. I thought it included personnel files for the executive session.
That was, yeah. To vote on it, that's what it was, yeah. A vote.
Right. Okay. So there were two requests in that meeting. One was tied to the files, personnel files, and then I thought we had one tied to the executive session for the same subject. Do we have access to understand how that read?
I just remember the past, okay, I remember the past meeting, it was clarified of we'd have to have a vote to get her files, and that's what I had then asked for and got a second from. But then also I think it was Becky, we were bouncing off of each other of they want to have the process of how due process for an employee, not necessarily the employee of Londa, but overall the process of due process for employees.
Yeah, and I think we ended with trying to garner some guidance from our attorney around this executive session. And I haven't seen anything come through yet from our board attorney giving us guidance on doing so.
So I'm looking back at the notes if it's helpful. It said that when Dr. Summers clarified, it says he shared the policy and the request, and then it says that you clarified your wishes to have the board vote to request a personnel file at a future board meeting, and then you clarified the request to investigation in HR employee policies to include an update on the past couple of months. And they talked about the overview of the grievance process. And then it said, Dr. Summers said that with respect to the executive session, we could also seek additional clarification from legal on how the policy is applied in context. Oh, that was Title IX. So it doesn't look like what you're asking for was specifically requested, which I was trying to find out if, based upon the notes. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly more than willing to understand our purview in having such a session. So, you know, I'll second the ask and really ask for some guidance on how we proceed with this particular ask.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other items?
Nope, that was it. Sorry, I didn't know you were waiting on me. My
No,
bad.
You're good. All right, I don't have any items, as I know we are going to be discussing KPIs or student, you know, scores, et cetera, in a future governing board meeting in short order. So that said.
Actually, I just remembered it's so late. You asked, so can I actually request the study session of the AI? I'll second. Thank you.
I'll second that.
So late. Oh my gosh. Okay. Study session of the AI. Thank you.
All right. With that said, we will move to section 14, adjournment. I motion that we adjourn this meeting at 9:23 p.m.
I motion to adjourn at 9:23 p.m.
I'll second that. Mr. Arner, we have a motion made by Mrs. Rooks, a second made by myself. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
Clerk Sandoval,
Yes.
Mrs. Rooks,
Yes.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yes.
All right, motion passes with 3 yeas and 1 not present. Thank you, board members. Have a great evening. Thank you, community. Have a great evening. Cabinet, thank you.